when we're talking about North Sea oil and gas fields and new drilling to be approved here. We're talking about 5 or 6 new fields this year alone.
Yeah, that's right. So under the theoretical guise of this being a move to protect household bills, we're seeing rumours that we're going to see the announcement of another 6 licences for North Sea oil and gas. Not only is this, and you would expect me to say this, climate vandalism, but it's also completely economically illiterate.
Now, why do you say that? Because the reason I'm cutting across you
of course.
People hurt. People feel the pain.
Absolutely.
There is an energy crisis. There's an energy security problem, which has been highlighted as well. And you may find that a lot of people may be very open to this. You call it a guise.
Yeah, so I think the reality is that the reason that the UK is so uniquely exposed to these price hikes that we're seeing is because of a failure to invest in clean energy and a failure to invest in insulation. So gas and oil are traded at a global level. So around 70 or 80% of our oil is exported. To say that producing more oil and gas in the UK will help British homeowners is frankly not true. And we know that because you only need to look at the profits that Shell announced last week. So monumental profits of 14.2 billion. That would be enough to wipe off the energy price hike that we've seen for households. That's not what's happening. These oil and gas companies do not have British households' interests at heart. What we need to see is a proper programme of, first of all, stopping so much heat being lost from UK homes. So a pensioner in the UK dies around every 7 minutes in the UK because our homes are terrifyingly cold and leaky. Let's invest in that. That'll create jobs. And let's also invest in homegrown renewable energy, which is cheaper, far cheaper at this stage, and can also be kept locally within a local economy and generates around 3 times as many jobs as fossil fuel extraction
I can
does.
feel Martin itching to come in on this because he's quite opposed on this.
It just shows the abject hypocrisy of Nicola Sturgeon. You know, basically, you know, the entire Scottish economy always was dependent on North Sea oil. It was before independence, the first time that they voted, and it still is now. And she's like swanning around, shaking hands with Joe Biden, making it at the COP26. And here she is, you know, just pumping more oil because they need it. And Britain needs it.
So does she make the decision, or is this,
No.
or does this from Westminster?
That's an interesting hot take on Nicola from Martin, but she's not actually involved in this story.
Right.
This is a Westminster drive from some of those people who have got net zero scepticism for reasons that I think are becoming increasingly unclear to the British public, who overwhelmingly support great investment in renewables. Yeah, they absolutely do, Martin. Poll after poll will tell you that. And they also rightly are sceptical. Yeah, absolutely. They want cheap energy.
Renewables are the most expensive form of energy.
Martin, that's just simply not true. And
Why
I
are
know
bills
that you
going
know
through the roof?
that.
It's £1,700
Because we are exposed
every year
to a global market in fossil fuels, global forces that are well beyond the control of the UK. So that is why we need to be investing in homegrown renewable energy. And again, I come back to the insulation thing. Yes, it's boring, but those old people out on the motorways last year may have had a point.
Insulate Britain. I mean, does it frustrate you that the news agenda can almost only cope with one subject at a time? And we went huge, didn't we, around the COP26 period, and everyone was sort of hand-wringing and accepting that we needed to change the error of our ways. And just a couple of months later, we're jettisoning all of those good ambitions and saying, now the cost of living crisis has come along. Those green ambitions, yes, but for the future generations, it shouldn't just be about the pensioners of today. We have to think about the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren of the future.
I just give you a quote here from the Telegraph, and they say that the Energy Secretary is actively resisting insane calls from Labour and the eco lobby, that's good, insane calls to turn off UK production. Doing so would trash energy security, kill off 200,000 jobs, and we would only end up importing more from foreign countries with dubious records.
But like I said, we are already exporting huge amounts of the oil and gas from the North Sea. Yeah. That gas and oil does not contribute to lowering household bills for UK homeowners. And the UK public know that. You only have to look at Shell profits. I don't think they do.
I looked at a map during the week in one of the papers, and what we import from Venezuela, what we import from the USA, what we import from Norway in terms of gas and oil. And you think, if this was really feeding the UK, we wouldn't have to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a global market and they will go to the highest bidder. In September, we exported record amounts to Belgium because they were willing to pay more than we were.
Gosh.
It does not bring down UK house bills.
I do have to say, though there is a picture front page of the Telegraph, I do want to mention as well, what you can see there
Fabulous
is
pic.
it's a fabulous, can I get that right? That is a horsey, and that's the household cavalry horses. So it is, but anyway, I don't know if you can see that. It's a lovely picture, beautiful picture. Right.
Should we move on to this story on the front of the Mail? And we're covering it in our programme this morning. Really important issue. There's this online safety bill going through Parliament. Lots of concerns about how to prevent youngsters getting access to porn, which everybody knows, experts and parents tell us, is incredibly harmful to youngsters. What do you make of the suggestions? Because I know this is an area of expertise for you. You are Mr. Porn himself, and I say that in all seriousness.
What accolade.
I mean, I'll allow you to explain your vested interest.
I'll take that as a compliment, Isabel. OK, so in 2013, I fronted a documentary called Porn on the Brain for Channel 4. The political hot potato of the time, and here we are again, was that pornography was poisoning ostensibly a generation of young men who were acting out porn fantasies and becoming misogynistic and sexually brutal and all the rest of it. And back then, and again, time has stood still, the answer from the government is to try and switch off the internet, which cannot happen. It just can't. I've spoken with about 45,000 teenagers throughout Britain, from every rank of school, from the most elite schools to council estate schools behind barbed wire. And the issue is the same. I asked them, if the government introduced these age verification checks, who could get around them? And all their hands go up.
How, though? Because you're being asked to either provide details of a credit card or a third party to prove that you're over 18. Now, you've got a 12-year-old son. Would he be able to get his way around that? And would this not work as some form of barrier?
I don't want to instruct your viewers on how to get around porn blocks, but I'm afraid it's incredibly easy.
They just wouldn't go to official sites. They'd just go to unofficial sites.
Who are these people? Where do they operate? They're talking here about fining them 10% of their profits, but who, where? I mean, they run through servers, proxy servers from all around the planet. It really is a sort of snake without a tail. And this idea...
So you're saying they're not like television companies. You know where Channel 5 is, you know where Channel 4 is. But whoever these publishers are of all of this, you think they're more slippery to pin down?
Well, they are. And they are, working oftentimes alongside some of the most bankrupt industries on the planet. The trading in human... prostitution. So to make them stand up as Ofcom would, I think, is naive. And all I've said all along is prohibition never works.
So what does work then? Because this is something that I know so many parents worry about. And I don't know if it's particularly a mother's worry or if you share that concern as a father, but I have a 6-year-old son, and I know that quite often I think half of 10-year-old boys have seen hardcore pornography, and I look at him and I think it's just years till his innocence is taken away in a way that our generation never had to go through.
It is a sad yet inevitable phenomenon. And I think all we can do is teach people to critically consume. This is going to happen, and therefore be a decent, respectful, loving, tender young lad.
I don't think it's an either or, right? I think we can be doing both. I totally don't disagree with you, Martin, that I think there needs to be a bigger conversation about, because we can never clamp all of this down. It is a whack-a-mole situation with the internet. And I think encouraging a healthier conversation with young people around what they consume and what that means in the context of loving relationships. However, we do know that tech giants, they know women are pregnant before women themselves know. So I do feel like they should be able to tell if a 9-year-old is viewing porn. I think it is okay for us to be asking for both. That they can up their game, while at the same time we have a wider societal conversation about the role of porn within our society.
What's their motivation to do that? It's not in their interest to stop their potential consumers, getting them hooked and addicted for a lifelong of porn addiction.
And I think that is why we do need legislation. I don't disagree with you, Martin. I think it's imperfect.
Can't legislate your way out of this.
It's part of the solution, I think.
Well,
right?
do you know what I think we'll do? We'll take this forward each hour, and we'll get, because as Isabel says, it affects anybody who's got a child. Indeed, there must be people living with partners who have terrible addictions to this sort of thing, breaks up relationships and whatever. So tweet us at GBNews, get in touch with us today, and we'll try and reflect that during the next newspaper review. Guys, I want to finish this section by talking about, I just can't explain this lad, Kurt Zouma, 27 years of age. He's a Premier League footballer. He plays for West Ham United, front page of the Sun today. And what they have is a video of this guy picking up his cat in the kitchen and kicking it like a drop kick, the way a goalkeeper would kick a ball up the pitch. And he does it in front of his child. He does it in front of someone else as well. And it just beggars belief, doesn't it? What people see as entertainment.
Yeah, I find this story quite disturbing and also very bizarre. I mean, Martin and I were discussing it before we came on here. The fact this was filmed seems both callous, but also frankly stupid.
Stupid, yeah.
I really don't understand what's going on here. I get nervous about stories like this on the front page because this will unleash a degree of sort of internet mob response, which not that I don't think that's justified. I hope this is dealt with it through the kind of proper channels of animal abuse. One thing I think we can all agree on is that the British public love pets, and this will go down absolutely horrendously. We all remember Cat Bin Lady. I don't know if she ever worked again.
Yeah, that's the thing. The court of public opinion is very clear on this, but are the actual courts clear on this? So people get away with tiny sentences for horrific animal abuse.
Animal abusers now face tougher prison sentences under a bill which passed towards the end of last year about all of this. So they can be put away for up to 5 years instead of just 6 months under the Animal Welfare Sentencing Bill. So that's people who organise things like dog fights and all sorts of horribleness like that. But I just really don't understand someone who just takes their anger and their insecurities out on an animal, a dumb animal. It's just
I mean, the cat in question, they're about £2,000 a pop. And I think it's like another kind of rich man's.
It's a Bengal.
Bengal cat, another rich man's bauble, and it's just. I think the more we sort of learn about footballers and how they lead their lives, I think the less we like them.
I think it's really interesting you make that point because it does relate. Again, it's another horrifying story about a high-profile footballer, and you do think at some point somebody need to kind of educate footballers on how to be good citizens.
It's the entitlement and the wealth it's about.
And the adulation and
What's the word? There seems to be very little pastoral care for them within clubs, and agents have an awful lot to blame because agents, I mean, they're just on their cut. They're on their cut, and there's multiple agents involved in the transfers of players and making them discontent. And it is just an isolated world these people live in. I mean, the poorest paid of them get 80 grand a year in the Premier League. I mean, that's your nobody if you get 80 grand a year.
It's a huge amount of wealth at such a young age.
80 grand a year, 80 grand a week, I meant to say. Sorry, a week there. Sorry. That was like when I got my first job in journalism and I was 19 years of age, I asked the boss man, I said, how much would I be paid? And he said, the NUJ rate, National Union of Journalists, £44.44. So I thought, £44.44 a week. I'm thinking, oh, that's less, that's £2,000 a year. I thought I'm on 3,000 at the minute, that's not good enough. So long story short, what I didn't realise is that was a day. That was a day. So suddenly I was getting 10,000 quid. So the thing is, sometimes worlds and salaries people are paid are very realistic and very poor, and sometimes you just can't comprehend them, as I couldn't at 19, getting 10 grand a year.
They're definitely not connected to intellect or talent. So many brain surgeons and whatever else. Exactly. No, but these footballers don't deserve more than people coming up with vaccines or whatever.
We have worked out today, a new survey says that, Amy, that to lose weight, stay in bed, basically.
Yes, I was very keen to get this story in the first slot in case there is still an opportunity for people to return to their beds with this new information. So apparently an hour extra sleep in bed can be the equivalent of saving 270 calories. To the extent I heard an expert on my way in this morning saying, given the choice between an extra hour in bed or getting up to exercise, what would you advise?
Oh, I know what I choose.
Listen to this. He said, stay in bed.
There you go. The experts have said it.
News viewers.
That is the best news all day. Thank you both very much indeed. The guys are going to be back. Martin and Amy are going to be back in an hour's time. Your comments are always welcome.
Yeah, now we're going to turn our attention to this. Past 20 months has seen more people embrace online games than ever before, with 50% of the population now participating in some form of online gaming on a regular basis. But this has also led to an increase in online fraud.
Now, this is Jamie Woodruff. Jamie, well, I think it's fair enough to say you know your way around the internet, Jamie, yeah?
Yeah, I think that's a good agreement. Yeah.
I think that's fair enough. So basically, what do you think about the restrictions that are being proposed here? Are the government overly optimistic about what can be done?
Yeah, so I think it's quite a positive thing, really. I mean, if we kind of look at it from, an online gaming perspective, there was around about 480,000 connected devices. TalkTalk published some research on Christmas Day. So if we kind of go back to that and how many people are, playing these types of online games, playing multiplayers, collaborating online, it's going to be a very serious thing. But when you kind of look for the Misuse of Communications Act that was wrought in like the kind of 90s, it wasn't really adapted to working from home, which we've seen over the last kind of 2 years. So I think the proposed regulations is definitely kind of a positive thing. It's going to be looking after a lot of people that don't have that type of access to readily available information. So I'm kind of looking forward to the proposed changes. But again, I think we're a couple of years off yet.
So another concern you have, Jamie, is fraud online to do with gaming services. So does it tackle this? Do you think the proposed online safety bill will actually help prevent this? Because so many people fall victim to this.
Yeah, understandably. And it's not just that, it's stuff like digital assets within games that are being compromised and being stolen. A lot of people want to get better and further within these types of online games. So they sign up to third-party websites. They share their information to purchase kind of digital currency to kind of better themselves. But when they share that type of information, what they don't realize and understand is that information could then be essentially reused or resold. So, for instance, they could recover their passwords from their email account if they've reused the same password.
Choice? Jamie, I know, but you see, almost
Sorry.
everything, if you order something, you can't progress unless you do give that information. So I know you say people don't realise that this information is used elsewhere, but often if you want to make a purchase or you want to gain access to some sort of site, it's either give me those details or you don't get any further. We don't have a choice.
Yeah, and that's just kind of approach that we're seeing as well. So, from a safety perspective, you need to ensure that obviously it's from the developer that you're purchasing content from. You're not using any kind of third-party plugins. Always have an up-to-date antivirus on your system. It's so important. And if there's any updates or patch management that need to be done as well. So taking all these things into consideration will help protect you. And even stuff like family safety settings, on consoles, ensuring that you have them enabled and they've been set up correctly.
That's such good advice. And I suppose lots of parents watching this will worry about, all the reasons I suppose this bill is being brought. What about those people who say that free speech is under threat by some of these suggestions that are being put in it, whether or not we should be wary of government regulation of the internet, for example?
So I kind of it falls upon all sides, really. I mean, if you've got nothing to be worried about, or you're not doing anything, wrong online in a sense, and you've nothing to worry out or to watch out for. I understand from a privacy perspective, again, there's a lot of information that we kind of transmit. Our entire lives are pretty much 80-90% online throughout the day, whether it be on our devices, whether it be on our laptops internally, or even consoles, or from a gaming perspective. So again, if you've got nothing to hide, then I wouldn't worry at all. But I think it's something that needs to happen and needs to help kind of change our future and change the landscape, if that makes sense.
What about changing your future and your landscape, Jamie? I'm just fascinated, knowing what you do, looking at you there. There you are sitting in your living room there. And you know what people go on all
That's my little office.
Oh, it's your office. Well, it looks very comfortable for an office. Nice sofa behind you. People will say, you shouldn't be online for any more than an hour or whatever. Give your brain a rest, give your eyes a rest, whatever. Well, for you, it's a full-time occupation. How do you think it's impacted on you, if at all?
Yeah, so I mean, it's very difficult, really. So I have a young daughter. She's 3 next week, called Eleanor. And the moment I brought her back from the hospital, I think in the first 2 to 3 days, I completely set up a different network for her internally at home. And now we've got a baby boy due in August. Again, I'm going to be setting up a completely different network. But I've always had that approach to security and to safety. It's very important. So you know, we wash our hands, we kind of brush our teeth, we have showers, we adapt this hygiene. And I think we need to adapt this type of cyber hygiene in the sense to, you know, when we're using kind of ATM machines, ensuring our pin's very secured, you know, we're hiding it from individuals watching potentially. But even then, technology is readily available. You just need to know where to look to be able to exploit somebody. So it's not like back in the old days where you'd have to create your own exploits or kind of create your own content to kind of distribute. Everything's there. You've just got to know where to look. So it's quite a scary element as well.
It makes me want to run for the hills, if I'm honest. It really does. Really good to get your thoughts this morning. Jamie Woodruff, thank you very much. Ethical.
Yeah, it's nice to be that. Thank you.
And an online security expert. The time is 6:57. This is Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel on GB News, on television and radio.
Yeah, coming up in the next hour, we'll have further reactions as 2 people are arrested after the Labour leader was hounded by protesters in Westminster yesterday afternoon. We'll also get continuing reaction to that story we're talking about in the paper review about porn. I've got one email that's come in from Melanie Curtis here. She says, thank you so much for highlighting this. It has worryingly become an epidemic. If WhatsApp and porn sites were held responsible like gambling sites are, then we wouldn't have this problem. Because of strict regulations, you do not find children on gambling sites. Fair point. Let us know your thoughts this morning.
Back after this. GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
At least 6 Conservative MPs are calling on the Prime Minister to withdraw his Jimmy Savile smear against the Labour leader after he was confronted near Parliament.
Good morning. It is 7 o'clock. It's Tuesday, February the 8th. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Leading the news this morning, Boris Johnson is being urged to apologise after Sir Keir Starmer was heckled by anti-vax protesters, repeating his Jimmy Savile comments. Do you think the Prime Minister should apologise?
Porn websites will be legally required to verify the age of their users under new internet safety laws. Do you think it will work? Let us know your thoughts this morning at GB News or GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Sleep is the key ingredient to weight loss after a study finds that staying in bed for an hour longer may keep you slimmer. Time to hit the snooze button.
And West Ham defender Kurt Zouma has apologised after a video surfaced online of him kicking and slapping a cat. The video's since been taken down, but should he face punishment? We want to know your thoughts this morning.
Good morning to you. At least 6 Tory MPs are calling on the Prime Minister to withdraw his Jimmy Savile smear against the Labour leader after the Labour leader, that is, was confronted by protesters outside Parliament yesterday.
Officers were escorting Sir Keir Starmer through a crowd when anti-vax protesters turned on him and police bundled him into a car after he was accused of protecting paedophiles. 2 people have been arrested.
GB News political correspondent Tom Harwood now with more on this. Tom is in Downing Street. Tom, what have you got to update us with?
Well, yesterday afternoon, a group of protesters gathered first outside Downing Street to hurl abuse at the people working in this street behind me. They were spoken to by, among others, Piers Corbyn, one of the leaders of the anti-vax movement in the United Kingdom. What then happened was a group of these people walked over towards Parliament, where they bumped into the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer. They started haranguing him and harassing him, shouting slogans from traitor to you're enabling the New World Order to you're undermining the Magna Carta, and of course accusing him of protecting paedophiles as well. One woman appeared to shout that he was responsible for Jimmy Savile going free. This was the context of this rabble that have been calling themselves the UK Freedom Convoy, trying to model themselves off the Canadian protests over the last few weeks. There can not have been more than a couple of dozen of them, but they had been hanging around Westminster yesterday, and quite frankly have been hanging around Westminster for quite some time before that, for many months before that as well. Some of the people in this rabble have been the same people who have been attacking and harassing and haranguing journalists and politicians of all stripes for quite some time.
And of course, the context to all of this, Tom, you know, we can't forget that Sir David Amess lost his life as an MP. He came under threat from a constituent, and the same happened to Jo Cox. There are these concerns about the roles of MPs and whether or not some of this language is contributing to perhaps behaviour towards them.
I think that might be going a little bit too far, given that we know that Sir David Amess was murdered by a terrorist, and we know that Jo Cox was murdered by a terrorist. We don't think that these terrorists had been influenced by what politicians had been saying in their language. We think they had been radicalised through the normal way in which terrorists are radicalised. It seems a little bit of a stretch to suggest that the words that have been used in the House of Commons influenced the mob that we saw yesterday, not least because this was a mob that had harassed people for many, many months beforehand. And I just wonder, are people seriously suggesting that if we hadn't heard this Jimmy Savile row last week, are people seriously suggesting that this mob, this screeching bundle of anti-vaxxers, would have simply ignored the leader of the opposition and not harassed him, harangued him and shouted horrific things at him? Most of the jibes that were shouted at the leader of the opposition were not to do with Jimmy Savile. They were to do with peculiar conspiracy theories ranging from Julian Assange to the New World Order. This was a group of people who have harassed journalists and politicians, from the BBC's Nick Watt to even me back in July, when I think some of the same people were shouting paedophile protector at just about anyone who they thought to be a journalist that they vaguely recognised. I think it is a bit of a stretch to suggest that this would not have happened had we not heard the Savile row last week.
Very measured assessment. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Tom. The main news stories you're waking up to. Boris Johnson has warned Russian President Vladimir Putin that Britain will not flinch as tensions between Russia and Ukraine continue.
The Prime Minister was writing in The Times saying he's considering dispatching RAF Typhoon fighters and Royal Navy warships to support the NATO Defence Alliance.
Pornography sites will soon legally be required to verify the age of their users. The online safety bill will require companies to put robust checks in place to stop children accessing harmful content.
Shoppers spending more on furniture and household goods helped retail sales bounce back in January. The latest figures show they were up nearly 12%. compared to the same time last year.
New study suggests energy drinks could be harmful to children, causing headaches, trouble sleeping and stomach problems.
Yeah, 1 in 3 young people drink them, apparently. There are now calls to ban their sale to under 18s.
Getting more sleep may be a handy way of shedding those extra pounds and getting in shape. New research suggests that getting an extra hour or more a night shaves around 270 calories off your daily diet, the equivalent of around 3 chocolate biscuits.
And West Ham defender Kurt Zouma has apologised after a video surfaced online of him kicking and slapping a cat. His clubs condemned the footage, and Zouma described it as an isolated incident that will not happen again.
The Duchess of Cambridge will become the new voice of CBeebies bedtime story to mark Children's Mental Health Week. She will read The Owl Who Was Afraid of the Dark by Jill Tomlinson. It'll debut at 10 to 7 on Sunday. A lot of reaction coming into that Kurt Zouma story, kicking the cat, his cat, and the video footage that has emerged off that. Catherine says he should be sacked. It was hateful what he did. Grizzle says West Ham should deal with it by agreeing the RSPCA should be involved, and I think that's right. It's not enough to say, right, you're fined 5,000 quid or whatever. I think you should be fined by the club, the money donated to an animal charity, preferably a cat charity with that, and some sort of rehabilitation.
Yeah, you need to get inside the mindset why you would think that was OK. Make sure you're not going to do the same thing. And as we said, there is this known link between violence towards animals and humans, just to make sure that that is ironed out as well. Margaret says this was a horrific attack as the cat was chased and tortured and a child was brought in to participate. An internal investigation by the club is not acceptable.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Kirsty, thank you for this, Kirsty. She said, sorry doesn't cut it. Hopefully, the RSPCA will be knocking on his door today to remove the abused cat and any other animals he has. Interesting point. The daughter of the late entertainer Des O'Connor has launched a legal challenge against the Metropolitan Police after a detective sergeant who called her amazingly hot kept his job. Now, the reason he didn't call her amazingly hot, just in real life, she had phoned to report a crime, and then this guy made these inappropriate comments. This was back in 2011 after a group of men tried to steal her phone outside her London home.
That's right. She was interviewed by Detective Chief Inspector James Mason, who allegedly made inappropriate advances. A tribunal last year found that Mason had breached standards, yet he was allowed to keep his job. Well, here to tell us more is Dr. Heather Brunskill-Evans, an academic and an author. Look, clearly if this went before a tribunal, it was decided that it was fair and proportionate for him to continue in his role as a Met Police officer. Do you think that was the correct decision?
No, I don't think it was the correct decision. It demonstrates the way in which such behaviour is just accepted as quite normal and quite acceptable. I think it's slightly more than that. Not only did he keep his job, but I think he's also an aide to Cressida Dick.
Well, that is even worse. And that doctor then brings this whole question. You know, you can be pro-police, but you still have to recognise that it seems to be that the Metropolitan Police, maybe other police forces, but certainly the Metropolitan Police, is institutionally sexist, racist, misogynistic. I don't know, but this really beggars belief that a professional could be called in and to aid and help that woman in her time of need, and all he thinks about is chatting her up. I mean, it doesn't
incredible. Even beg a belief, though, does it? After everything we've learned about the Met Police in the last year or so since Sarah Everard, it's not even surprising anymore.
Absolutely. And the significance of this case, although it's sort of a little bit high profile in that it's the daughter of Des O'Connor who's wanting to bring the judicial review, and I'm very pleased she is doing that. But it demonstrates the sheer normalisation of this sexism and, I gather, racism in the Met Police. Now, they have continually denied this over the past few years. suggesting always that if someone has been found guilty of misconduct, which this PC was actually found guilty of misconduct and still has his job, as I gather. The significance is it's not just one bad apple. There are various reviews now of the Met Police going on because I think there is a realisation that these are not just isolated incidents. So the judicial review, where a citizen brings a case about the practices of particular institutions, in this case, the Met Police, is very welcome.
What do you make of Met Commissioner Cressida Dick? Of course, lots of people delighted to have a female in that most senior role, and yet it's been on her watch that there's been such a light shone on misogyny within her force. Do you think that she's done enough to counter it? And obviously, throughout her time at the top, there have been lots of calls for her to resign. I wonder if you echo those.
Well, I don't want to get into a sort of lynch mob mentality where what we do is single out one person and ask them to resign. I don't know enough, honestly, about Cressida Dick and her, the wider context in which she has been policing or responsible for policing practice. But it seems, from where I'm sitting, that there are cases that she has to answer for. Now, unfortunately, we live in a world in which it would be wonderful if women called out sexism and misogyny in their workplace when they found it, in particular those in positions of responsibility. But I'm afraid it doesn't work like that.
I just over the years, it just amazes me the amount of people in professional positions who abuse that position with women. And it disgusts me, actually. People who now use social media, people who are physiotherapists, people who are dentists, people who are doctors. And they take the opportunity to go one step further. I mean, this guy admitted, the police detective we're talking about, James Mason here, that he could probably get fired for coming on to Christina. And he quizzed her. I mean, so she's mugged, and he quizzes her with admitted sexual overtones before asking her out for a drink and calling her amazingly hot. People, there must be more stories about this other professions.
So many.
Sorry, Em, can I just say, the reality is women have been saying this for years and years and years, actually. And it's always been dismissed as, just a singular incident. What's happening now is, I think, society is realising and joining up the dots that this is something which is institutional and structural. So it's fantastic that people are beginning to realise that. But the reason why this police officer felt quite okay to recognise that he could be dismissed, that he was committing some offence, but seemingly was unconcerned about it, is because he felt perfectly safe, because he knew, I assume, that this was quite normal conduct within the police force.
And of course, I suppose the big worry with all of this is that hearing these sorts of stories, or knowing that women perhaps might not feel entirely secure, they won't report crimes, or they won't go to safe spaces, whether that be the police or whatever institution you're talking about. And the net result is that women end up being victims when they shouldn't be.
Well, we're changing the discourse around it now. It used to be that when women did complain, they became the object of critique. So it would be, what did you do to induce this man to behave like that? It was the women that were given responsibility, not the men who were doing it. And that's the shift that's gone on, a really good shift now that we're putting the focus where it actually belongs. So hopefully, when we do that, more women will be able to feel confident in coming forward to make complaints. Because why would you make a complaint if you then would become the target.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think it then results in, I've spoken to women in the past who've been in situations like that, and they admitted they tried to laugh it off.
Yeah, I've been in a situation like that.
Have you?
Yeah, professionally. And it's very often when you're young and new perhaps to an industry and afraid to rock the boat, or someone in a position of power, you know that if you feel like you're calling someone out, then that's your career doom. There's all sorts of women that have stories like that. You don't have to go far to ask people, do you, Doctor?
Especially if he's your boss. The chances are that you're not going to speak out. And this is the reality of it. And it's wonderful that we're having this discussion now. It's been sort of almost a secret for years and years and years that women know about, but nobody else would take seriously. Thank you for having this on the programme.
Dr. Brunskill-Evans, thank you very much indeed. Fascinating to hear from you. I hope you do embolden more women to speak out about this and raise questions like this. It's just funny you talking about this. This sounds, I'm laughing at this now, but it was quite serious. I was in a road traffic accident once, and the investigating officer, who was a woman, came to my home and cornered me in the kitchen and propositioned.
Were you already Ireland's famous broadcaster?
How do you know it was in Ireland?
I don't know. I'm just saying, were you already a famous Irish broadcaster at this point?
I was.
I'm sure. Yeah. Well, you get propositioned all the time then.
But what I'm saying was, it puzzled me a lot. It puzzled me. Like I said, what's this got to do with what we're talking about?
Welcome to our world.
Well,
that's what it feels like.
Okay. Look, with that, I hope that's got you talking today, and you want to, get in touch and share your stories. There's an email which is gbviews@gbnews.uk on your screen now, and there is a Twitter address which is @gbnews as well. Okay, so be good to hear from you.
Yeah, and after the break we'll try and read out some of those for you. We're going to take a break now. After that we'll be back with the sports news, but first here's your forecast.
Hello, a very good morning to you. A mild start for most of us, bright for many actually throughout much of today, but a lingering zone of cloud and rain will affect parts of northern England, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland. Here's the weather front responsible. It's dividing the country today between mild but cloudy southern parts, brighter but colder northern areas. So for central and northern Scotland, here it is a chilly start to the day with showers arriving, particularly for northern and western Scotland, along with a brisk breeze with gales to the far northwest. Snow falling above 300 or 400 metres. Northern Ireland, meanwhile, southern Scotland, northern England stays cloudy and in places fairly damp, particularly northwest England. But to the south, again, across much of the rest of England, much of Wales, brighter skies, even some sunshine coming through. And where we get some sunshine, 14 Celsius is possible. And actually that weather front remains in place more or less throughout Tuesday evening, but eventually during Tuesday night it starts to push south, initially into North Wales, northwest England, some heavier bursts of rain for a time before the rain peters out as it pushes into South Wales, the Midlands, by the end of the night. To the south, 9 Celsius, so another mild night to come. But to the north, clearer spells for northern England, Northern Ireland, Scotland as well, and it turns progressively colder in Scotland, so initially snow falling to 400 metres, eventually snow perhaps falling to the surface across northern Scotland, and certainly settling above 200 metres for the likes of the West Highlands. Meanwhile, there will be some sunshine away from the showers for Northern Ireland, Northern England, and increasingly the Midlands into Wales, as well as colder, brighter air filters southwards. 12 Celsius, though, for London, under a lot of cloud on Wednesday, but those brighter skies by the end of Thursday affect most of us, and Friday's looking bright, but on the cold side.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We're now going to go through the sports stories of the day. As usual, Paul Coyte joins me here in the studio. And Winter Olympics beginning to heat up. The snow's beginning to melt. What have we got to say here about GB?
Well, Kirsty Muir, we were talking about the big air yesterday, and we're trying to explain the big air.
Yeah.
She got fifth. She came fifth. So she's only 17, so didn't get a medal there.
Only 17?
Only 17.
Wow.
Yeah, I think she's got a few Olympics ahead of her, so she's going to be okay.
Yeah.
But it's the bronze. Did you watch the curling yesterday?
I would find it hard. I wouldn't.
Really?
I can't admit to profess any interest in the Winter Olympics.
See, I got to tell you, once you sit down and start watching the curling,
that's probably true.
Just give it a go. Just give yourself half an hour.
I haven't got time in life to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Watch the reruns instead, then.
Yeah.
But it's going on at the moment. Jen Dodds and Bruce Moat are in the mixed doubles of the curling against Sweden. So they got beaten yesterday, went right down to the wire.
And there are a lot of different categories of the curling then. So we like the curling.
We like
but there's single sex, there's mixed, there's doubles,
that's
there's
right.
Goodness knows what. Right, okay.
Well, no, it's just those. Yeah, that's it.
Now, a guy called Cornelius Kirsten will become the first Briton to compete in long track speed skating.
Yeah.
So how long is long?
1,500 metres.
Yeah, okay.
He's got a Dutch father. Now, for some reason, the Dutch are particularly good at speed skating.
Well, of course, because when the dikes froze over in winter and whatever it is, on all the canals, that's where they learned to ski.
There's a few. So there's that.
Yeah.
They're extremely tall. They're the tallest race in the world as well. So apparently, they are apparently very tall. Have you ever met a short Dutch person?
Edwin van der Sar is very tall, you're right.
He is very tall. He's short, though, for being Dutch. Yeah. So very tall, and it fits. And also, I did read somewhere, because I'm trying to work out why are the Dutch so good at speed skating. So obviously, the dikes come up, the tall, and also the fact that they said that when they won their first medal over there, all of a sudden, everybody went speed skating crazy, and everybody started getting into it. So that is one of the reasons. So anyway, getting back to Cornelius, his dad is Dutch, so that's where he got his love of speed skating, so now he's skating for us.
OK, right. GB cross-country contenders in the sprints, Andrew Musgrave, Andrew Young, James Clugnett.
So that goes at 10:30 today. So whether there's chance of medals, I'm not so sure, but hopefully, although it's going on at the moment, it's Bruce and Jennifer in the curling. That's where our hopes are.
Newcastle United, they have signed a guy called Bruno Guimaraes.
Yes.
What does he do, and what have you got to say about him?
Midfielder. Basically, he's been saying that being at Newcastle, it's like a dream. He's come from Lyon, whether he knew all the history of Newcastle before he came. But he's saying that Newcastle have a great chance of winning the Champions League.
When?
Well, I would say within the next 20 years. I don't know whether he says when he's playing, but I don't know how long he's going to play for. But you know what? You look at Newcastle, and should they get through this season and manage to stay up, there is so much money. So they've made good signings. Who expected to play against play today, who are taking on Everton. you know, it is going to go in the right direction because look at Manchester City. If there's money behind it and it stays there, I think they'll do all right. But it could take a little longer than maybe Bruno thinks it's going to take.
So they're playing Everton tonight.
Yes, they are.
Who've got off to a great start with Frank Lampard, of course. Now, West Ham play Watford tonight. Burnley play Man U, which is going to be difficult. But the headlines for West Ham today are on the front pages, and their midfielder Kurt Zouma on this. How do you think this will play out for this guy?
This is a difficult one because I don't think I've ever seen animal cruelty involved in footballers. I mean, it's a horrible story. But what do West Ham do? I mean, when it comes to RSPCA, I guess someone can complain to the RSPCA, so he could be prosecuted for this. But how do West Ham then play this? Do they ban him for this? Do they then fine him for this? Or maybe are they thinking on a PR? Maybe, well, I say a stunt, but something to do with PR, and maybe say, you know, spend some time at the RSPCA. I don't know. He's apologised. He's got to do something.
But I think visibly, if they say footballers are role models, this guy has got to be seen to be contrite. He's got to be seen to make a donation to a cat charity. And as you say, probably work in a cattery or an animal sanctuary.
I think it'd be the right thing to do. I mean, how do you deal with something?
Well, the story, if you haven't come across it as well, he kicked his cat about the kitchen. Basically, that's what he did. So so those games, look forward to those tonight.
Yeah, it should be good tonight.
And meanwhile, Ralph Rangnick, he's a bit peeved. He's trying to impose dressing room order again, that he is the boss, and he's a bit peeved about what the players are saying on social media.
Well, it's the thing is, he's just saying, come and speak to me. I was speaking to someone about Manchester United yesterday, and that's the first thing that comes up. So, well, here you've had Jesse Lingard that's complained about the way Manchester United have handled things, whereas Ralph Rangnick has spoken to. It's like, for goodness sake, you always imagine that a manager and a player, that would be how it would work. It'd just be like manager speak to player, player speak to manager. But these days, well, I'll put something on social media, then I'll have everybody behind me. But Ralph is basically saying, let's just speak face to face. If there's any problem, then we deal with it, which surely is the right way of dealing with things.
Well, indeed, but it strikes you, I mean, I think Jesse Lingard felt genuinely aggrieved and sort of can understand it, and that's how he was getting his voice.
This is you're saying because of the fact that he was dropped, he was told to rest, whereas he didn't want to rest when playing.
He said, I'm not tired.
Yeah,
he said, I'm ready for this, I'm up for this. But anyway, Rangnick has got to show he is the headmaster,
of course he
and
is.
They are the pupils, basically. He's got to have that respect there.
But player power is different these days, and it's very difficult for managers. There is no Alex Ferguson anymore, and of course his ghost will always be above everything that happens.
Okay, Paul, appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed. With that, we'll take the break. We've got the newspaper review coming after this. Please don't go away. GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
There we are, 31 minutes past the hour of 7 o'clock on this Tuesday morning. It's Isabel and Eamonn here, and this is GB Breakfast.
It is time to go through the papers. We're joined by Martin Daubney, Deputy Leader of the Reclaim Party, and Amy Cameron, who is a climate campaigner. A very warm welcome back to both of you. Thanks for sticking around for another round. I'm just trying to find my list. Have you got our list?
Yeah, Anna, you
one.
want to begin. We talked about this last time around, and your take on Keir Starmer being jostled, being hassled, being heckled, maybe a bit more than that, by this crowd yesterday in Westminster.
Yeah, so I think by now a lot of people will have seen this footage, and I think it is deeply disturbing and really quite unsettling. And I think it is a result of currently having a Prime Minister who is so self-interested, so shameless, that to protect his own skin, he is willing to bring down our democracy, our public trust, our public unity. And I think we have seen Boris Johnson over the years build a career on dog whistling, right? He's got form on this. Years back, when he compared Muslim women to letterboxes, there was a spike in attacks on Muslim women, 42% of which directly referenced his words. And he's gone from dog whistling through columns and the like to full-on foghorning, using parliamentary privilege to give space, to give acceleration to these far-right tropes about Keir Starmer. And I think he is dragging our democracy into the dirt.
I think if we're going to get into a debate about political language, then I suppose we have to be fair right across the board, and we have to look at what David Lammy has said. He was walking shoulder to shoulder with Keir Starmer in that footage when he was mobbed, describing Conservatives as Nazis. You've got Angela Rayner calling Conservatives scum. We've got Starmer calling a variant of COVID, the Johnson variant, which went on to kill many, many people. So it's right across the political spectrum, isn't it, Martin?
Yeah, I think it is. And you know, as I said in the previous hour, you know, politics can be a brutal sport. You know, it really is. On the front line, when you're campaigning and knocking on doors, you never know what you're going to get.
You've had a really rough experience with that, haven't you?
Yeah, I did. I mean, when I was in Eastwood, I campaigned in Ashfield in the general election 2019, and there were people coming out with knives and trying to punch us out, and you know, really horrendous face-to-face abuse. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm saying it's a thing. And actually, I understand why the political class is held in such contempt, because they don't listen, they don't act, they try and suppress votes, they try to cancel Brexit. Keir Starmer tried to cancel Brexit. He led the People's Vote movement to suppress 17.4 million votes. Now, these comments are about Jimmy Savile. And should Boris Johnson apologise? No, I don't think he should.
Why?
Because I think it's just words. I think we need to be a lot less offended by words.
But it's clearly not just words, right? Because this is a fairly aggressive, bordering on violent mob surrounding the leader of the opposition. We know it's not just words. We saw the murder of an MP last year. We saw the murder of Joe Cox a mere 8 years ago. We saw what happened in the Capitol in the US. The words of politicians in positions like Boris Johnson's have real impact. And I think the British public is better than this. Boris Johnson has never been popular. His popularity is a myth. There has always been more people who have disliked Boris than liked him.
If he's disliked,
relatively
he'd get voted
more
out,
popular.
wouldn't he?
Well, there's a lot of people who say that majority is also dependent on the fact that he was up against Jeremy Corbyn.
Indeed, he was relatively popular, right? And the reason for that is that he is a divisive character. And the British public don't want that. We don't want this tenor of debate in politics. I think British people want to see a level of decency, a level of respect. Martin, I don't think people should have been threatening you with a knife when you were door knocking. I do not think that is okay.
No, but you don't think a lot of this permeated down by the standards set by Donald Trump in politics?
Absolutely. And Boris Johnson is a mini Trump. He is using the tropes of Trump, the tools of Trump, the dog whistling, the giving voice to these far-right tropes, and it is dangerous. We saw that.
And Tobias Ellwood's come out, hasn't he, the MP, accusing Boris Johnson of turning into sort of Trumpism, parliamentary.
Yeah, but there will always be people within any political party criticising their leader because they don't like the leadership or the direction of travel.
But you see, going back to what Anna was saying there, here's a headline now, Martin. I know you're going to talk about this. This is front page of the Express, right? So it says there, Boris Rishi is loyal and we're united on problems. Now, I really don't care who you vote for, if you're pro-Boris or anti-Boris, whatever it is. But do you actually believe that? Do you believe that? Come on.
Well, I think the Daily Express believes it. They certainly do, or at least they trumpet it. And the rest of humanity thinks, well, I don't know about that.
Do you believe that?
Absolutely not.
Based on the man's form?
Yeah, based on all of it, right? And based on what we're seeing in terms of quite important policy decisions as well. I mean, we saw the lack of an announcement yesterday about NHS waiting lists because Downing Street are being held hostage by number 11, by the Chancellor, because there is disunity in the Cabinet, and that does actually result in like real-world negative impacts, whether you like the Conservatives or not. You need a functioning government to deliver, and we don't have that.
I have to say, Martin, if I was Prime Minister, and I know this is an historical thing, I'd think, no, let's get it straight. I'm in charge, not you. But
you would fall out with number 11
completely.
In like the first
just watch my lips, right? You do what I say. But this power that a Chancellor seems to have, incredible.
Yeah, and I do think people respond to strong leadership, and for right or for wrong, you know, during the Brexit campaign, when Boris said, let's get Brexit done, and it resonated on doorsteps, and as a campaigning politician at the time for the Brexit Party, we knew we'd lost. Because it was that simple message, simple to understand. Now, the Conservatives are brilliant at winning elections. Doesn't matter what you think about them, they're brilliant at the machinery of politics. And this is more machinery, it's more posturing. You know, you're right that the Chancellor holds a huge amount of sway. But all of these things are the result of a disastrous lockdown. And we didn't have a political opposition. Keir Starmer didn't oppose the lockdowns. He wanted longer, harder, sooner lockdowns. Devastated economies, devastated people's livelihoods. And so back to your story, that this anger against the political class is real. And they can bleat about it all they like. Be more decent. Listen to people. Talk to people. Get inside their lives and stop judging them.
I don't think we disagree on any of that, but I think Boris Johnson, exactly to your point, Boris Johnson is weak because of his behaviour, because of his conduct, because of things like the Savile smear, and it's with a weak leader that you see power being shifted to number 11. That's what's happening here, and it is destructive. It's destructive to politics and it's destructive to the public.
Interesting. Let's take a look at The Guardian, Amy. This story, 1 million UK adults go without food at some point in the last month, and of course, we're talking about the year of the squeeze. Things are only going to get worse. We heard, didn't we, yesterday from the boss of Tesco saying the worst is yet to come. Very shocking, all of this.
I often, Anna, and I say this
Amy.
to my wife. Amy, sorry, I've called you Anna throughout this.
My sister's name's I ran with it.
Sorry, Amy, forgive me.
Don't worry.
But I often say this to my wife. I look at the price of things, whether it's eating out in a restaurant in the high street, whether it's going to the cinema, whatever it happens to be, and I say, we are paid really well, and we're balking at this, what we've got to pay. Think if you were working poor or just poor, it is unbelievable what you pay for food. Takeaways, particularly.
Yeah.
You know.
I think, and this is the reason I wanted to speak about this story, is that we can often talk in very big terms about the economy, and this is the reality, right? Like we talk about gas prices and global volatility, but this is families going without food. That's what this means. This government has presided over the biggest fall in disposable household income on record, bigger than post the recession. And what we're seeing is consistently a sort of protection of profits over people. So we removed the universal credit uplift last year. That was £1,000 out of the pockets of people who needed it the most. And now with these spiking energy and food costs, this is real life.
But do you think... also, sorry, I just want to make this point about real life and your environmental campaign and whatever it is. Real life, and we look, they remove this and they remove that, and Rishi Sunak has to balance budgets and whatever. Real life is allow us to frack, and we'll be like Saudi Arabia or Dubai or whatever it is. We will have money to burn. We'll have social care paid off. We'll have the NHS paid off.
Eamonn, that's just absolutely not the case.
Well, it is the case.
fracking is not a cheap form of energy. I don't know who's told you that, but that is simply not true. At best estimates, we might see some energy being produced in the 2030s.
The revenue
That's
for the country. Revenue for the country.
That's not the way that this country works, and you know it. We saw those record profits from Shell last year. The UK is the most profitable country for oil and gas companies in the world. So anyone who tells you that fracking in the UK, which is wildly opposed by the public, as we know, that's what stopped it in its tracks previously. Anyone that tells you that's going to bring down bills is lying.
Martin, I can feel you bristling, because you're a big fan of the idea of fracking, aren't you?
I'm a big fan of people having more money in their pocket. And I'm a big fan of net zero targets will cost every British household £1,700 per year, every year, until 2050. It's zealotry, it's ideology, and it's crushing the working classes. It's middle-class nonsense. It's not helping the working poor.
I find that
just
so
about managing will be even bigger.
I find it so patronising we say that the working class can't care about climate change. That's wild to me.
They care about surviving.
Care about their kids.
They care about heating.
You don't think they care about getting cheaper electricity from renewables instead of going after profits for Shell and the like?
The most expensive form of energy production is renewables.
If a middle-class liberal said that working class couldn't care about climate change, they would be laughed out of town. That is patronising talk. You can both want cheaper bills.
Let's say if they had a choice about climate change or not skipping meals.
That's a false choice, Eamonn.
Yeah. I wanted to bring up that point because going back to the food debate, quite often, as Eamonn pointed out, the most expensive food is the most unhealthy food. And if people could go back to almost the wartime mentality of trying to make things last, because you can feed on a smaller amount of money. It's not necessarily easy, it's not necessarily fun, but it is possible, and you don't have to do it to the detriment of your children's planet.
But people are time poor as well, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's one of the problems. As you say, it's working poor.
Yeah.
You know, these are people who are trying to make ends meet through multiple jobs. So it's time poverty as well as economic poverty. And that means things like, yes, sensible moves like bulk cooking and making the most of what's in your fridge. They simply don't have the luxury of time to take those steps.
No more green taxes.
Martin, it's just simply, you're making people make a false choice. And frankly, renewables and insulation will bring down bills. Not only
who pays
cheaper
for the insulation?
Well,
the government.
It's another good point to throw out there for our views, our GB views today. If it matters to you, it matters to us on this. Green taxes, yes or no, or not just at the minute. At GB News, let us know.
Yeah, should we turn our attention to this next story? Royal Shakespeare Company to teach people about racism, sexism and ableism. This is page 7. Actually, I think they even mention it on the front of the Telegraph, but they've gone into it on page 7. Is this anything different from what people have been doing in English literature for years with Shakespeare? They've taught about all different forms of life, haven't they, through Shakespeare's work?
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, this is more nonsensical cancel culture cobblers. But actually, I think we should be talking about this because this is the Royal Shakespeare Company's head of education, which sounds a bit ominous in itself, Jackie O'Hanlon, basically overlaying modern views onto work that's 4 centuries old. And when we do that, we clearly draw false comparisons. So it's sexist, it's racist, it features toxic masculinity and issues around consent. Why can't we just celebrate and enjoy and cherish British history and culture without rewriting it through the prism of history? And this is the actual RSC's own head of education destroying the bard. She's not fit to lace his boots.
Do you think that they're just trying to get in there before they get cancelled, in a way, Amy?
That's a good point.
Or is that?
I think I'm actually interested that Martin doesn't like what they're doing here because they're actively not cancelling Shakespeare. What this is about putting it into the context of modern times. One of the beauties of Shakespeare is how resonant it is with modern day, right? We've seen these Lady Macbeth comparisons with Carrie Johnson just this week. He is incredibly resonant in our current times. And I think that's why it's such a powerful vehicle to talk about how things were, how things are, how we want things to be. This is not cancelling, it's a conversation.
I'll ask you all, because we've all been through this at school, Shakespeare, right?
Well, I'm nervous.
No, what I'm going to say is I had starring roles in Henry IV, Part 1 and 2. I was Henry V on stage. But I tell you what, it might as well have been in Mandarin to me.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, do we really... Isabel's looking disgusted
No.
at me.
As a child, I probably didn't appreciate it. But I think as an adult, like with so much of my education, history and things, I actually appreciate it more now than when I was at school.
I think I'd like to appreciate it, but, I mean, the truth is, what good does it do you? What good does it do you? I have an A-level in English literature.
We've got a Philistine sitting here.
What you are, you're a snob, right? You're an intellectual
No, I think most
snob.
people would say William Shakespeare internationally is not only a literature hero,
We
but
can't even understand the English part of it, never mind the hidden messages of racism, sexism.
Someone help me defend the bard, for goodness sake.
Even Holmes is cancelling Shakespeare. I'm surprised her
I just have this thing, you know, we were talking there about food poverty and whatever. Honestly, I would have been better off in school, as most people would, to learn domestic science, cookery, all that.
Doesn't have to
rather
be
than
either or.
Yeah, I don't think it's an either
This is your favourite phrase. It doesn't have to be an either or. It's not transferred.
I've stolen it.
She's stolen it. Oh.
Oh, I've enjoyed this. This is very entertaining. Right, where are we going? Waiting times. Should we cheer ourselves up with this this story? People having
Well,
to
you're not
wait.
going to cheer yourself up with that.
No, I
Waiting
know. I
times
was
are a
being
year.
sarcastic. Page 5 of the Telegraph.
Yeah, so we've kind of already touched on this. This is the story about yesterday's non-announcement on NHS waiting lists.
Yes.
So I think it's 300,000 people now waiting for at least a year for surgery, which is an almost 200-fold rise since prior to the pandemic. The reason I want to touch on this is, yes, I'm a bit of a broken record, but this is what happens when you have a dysfunctional government. So we know that we were expecting this big announcement yesterday, but
you know,
instead
those two
hamstrung.
Egypts, so we just show that front page again there. Those two Egypts wearing masks and standing beside some sort of scanner or whatever it is, and they've got nothing to say. So they go through this. They obviously don't like each other. They're, you know, they're bickering over budgets and goodness knows what. And the reality is, as well, that there's 1 year waiting. I saw a news report last night of a man with a hernia. My God, I don't know if any of you saw it on ITV News last night. But it was, his whole stomach was distended.
And he can't get up.
I know you don't like talk of discharge or anything else.
Stop! Oh, God.
It was horrendous.
Does
that
anyone
poor
like
man,
talk of
No, I don't think I'm alone in that.
that poor man, he's been waiting for years to have an operation on that. And you're right, the reality is this. What are we going to do about this? If you've got cancer, if you're waiting for a knee replacement, if you're, you know, what are we going to do? Cataracts?
Is there time to have the discussion about whether or not, if you can afford to go private, perhaps you should go private? So is there a moral obligation? For example, in Australia, if you can afford to pay for it privately, you're expected to, because then the state can pick up the bill for those that can't. Do we need to have that grown-up discussion about the future?
I think we do. And, you know, one of the kind of knock-on effects of the pandemic has been this kind of deification of the NHS. You're not allowed to even, you know, cross-examine how it's funded, how it exists. And all of this, by the way, is just a kind of knock-on of the pandemic. You know, stay home, protect the NHS, save lives, and die slowly of...
But this is what they want, right? Because the Tories will give a big talk about protecting the NHS because they know it's beloved. I do think it represents some of the best of Britain, the NHS, and I think the vast majority of the public agree on that. But they have chipped away at the services through chronic underfunding over years.
Oh, come on, they fund it more than ever. The NHS gets more than ever
real-term pay
before.
cuts of over £1,000 in the last 10 years, but real-term pay cuts for some of our most valued workers. That football story we were touching on before, you know, who do we value in our society? But what they've done with the NHS is chipped away to the point that people start to disengage from it, right? So they start, as you say, Isabel, to say, maybe I'll just go private. That's what they want us to do. Yeah. They want us to remove ourselves from the services so we stop paying so much attention as they increasingly privatise it.
What I appreciated, over the past year, I have had chronic back issues and a sciatic nerve problem, whatever. What have I done? I've gone private. Private for physio, private for injections, private for all sorts of things with this. And all it's done is make me appreciate somebody who can't pay
100%.
to go privately
100%.
and they have to live with that pain. I mean, I had chronic pain and I would have paid anything to get the steroid injections that I got. And just say you can't. You know, you can't, you're not in that position.
But it would free up, what I'm saying is if people are spending more of their own money, if they can afford to, then it makes the resources more accessible for those that can't afford it. So the whole system moves better.
If you made that argument for private education, you would be derided, which is exactly the same education.
Well, I do make the same argument. For, you know, if you can afford to privately educate your children, why wouldn't you?
And
then, but... There you
Anyway.
go. That's another debate.
One more, let's stop. But so there we are. Do we want to talk about the Jimmy Carr
Have we got
joke?
time?
I'm
Yeah.
not really sure, Martin. I mean, it's for you, it's a very sensitive subject.
Yeah, I mean, all I would say, without going into the details, Jimmy Carr's got a new Netflix show. He talks about the Holocaust, then he talks about the Gypsy and traveller community, and there's predictable outrage about his humour. All I would say is, we should cherish the freedom of speech that humour represents.
Right. He made a joke about gypsies.
Yeah.
Right. Joke. Well, if you're a gypsy, you'll not find it too funny. But is anything off limits? I mean, this was related to the Holocaust.
I don't think anything should be off limits in humour. I think humour should be sacrosanct. It should be protected, and one man's offence is another man's laughter. And, we're seeing Savvy Javi getting involved, politicians getting involved. Do you know where had state-approved jokes? Nazi Germany. If you criticise Hitler, you get hung. Kim Jong-un, North Korea, state-approved jokes.
But the thing
we can't go down that route.
The thing is, we could all leave this room and you might tell that joke to us. And our reaction's our reaction. But none of us, I mean, Jimmy Carr goes public, he's on television saying it. None of us could repeat that joke. On television.
But in a sense, that's his job, to be the most offensive person out there and to push the envelope. Because these days, everything that we don't like, we want to cancel, we want to silence. I think we should have more of this.
I don't think he's been cancelled, is he? This was on a Netflix special with millions of viewers. Jimmy Carr is not going to be cancelled. But I think I do stand by the simple premise of punch up with comedy. I think clever comedy, good comedy, funny comedy is comedy that makes us laugh ourselves, that makes us laugh at the structures around us, that makes us laugh at those in power. I don't think it's laughing at a community that have been absolutely lambasted. I also think the faux outrage from this government on this is laughable. That is a joke, because this government have pushed through such regressive policies towards the Gypsy, Romani and traveller community.
Just a few years ago, we were all Je suis Charlie, and now we're just bedwetters.
Yeah, it's interesting. Look, thank you. We were just reflecting the views there inside the newspapers as regards Amy and Martin. Thank you for it. They're going to be back in an hour's time. And if you want to make a contribution, have your say about what they're saying, please let us know. For the moment, guys, thank you.
Thank you very much. OK, we're going to turn our attention to the ongoing crisis on the border with Ukraine. Boris Johnson has warned the Russian President Vladimir Putin that invading would backfire and only serve to strengthen NATO.
Writing in the Times, the Prime Minister has also indicated support for sanctions, adding he's considering deploying Royal Air Force fighters and Royal Navy warships to the region. We're joined now by the Daily Telegraph columnist Anne Elizabeth Mutte on this. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, what do you make of what the Prime Minister has written today?
I actually think that it's a very different attitude towards Ukraine, the Ukraine crisis, than Emmanuel Macron, who was with President Putin yesterday. But in many ways, I think Britain is sort of fulfilling one end of the seesaw. It's sort of being firm, and France is saying we can talk, and we'll see which solution has any kind of effect. You always have a feeling that both of them are in political trouble. One because he needs to be re-elected, and the other one because he is in trouble. In which case, it's also very good to sound martial or enterprising about Ukraine, because it's supposed, I'm not sure it's working, but it's supposed to move people's eyes from what's happening to them right now for a bit.
Elizabeth, do you know where my eyes moved, and I suppose everyone else's? The huge length of that table that Macron and Putin sat at. And I thought to myself, if this was supposed to make Macron look like I'm a player,
Well, it was hosted in Moscow, so it's supposed to make Putin look like a player.
Well, Macron only went because of
I
his
see what you mean. I thought you meant the table supplied by the Kremlin.
No, but what I'm saying, Anne Elizabeth, is really, I just thought it didn't play that well for Macron, really.
It did not, but it's not the length of the table. There was a meeting with Viktor Orban, who's a Putin ally, a week before, and it's the same table because Putin doesn't want to catch COVID, and he's a lot more serious about social distancing than, say, Boris Johnson is. The table it was not brought in especially for Macron, and that's exactly the sort of joke that the Russians might play to make a point, but not in this case. It's the table, the optics. I mean, I'm not saying that they're disappointed with the optics, but that table has been used with everyone at the Kremlin. The rest, unfortunately, was not going so well. And after 5 hours of discussion, you can cut this in half because there was translation going on. But even 2.5 hours is a long talk, and Putin said, I've been tortured by Emmanuel Macron, and then he reiterated absolutely every single one of his positions. So Emmanuel Macron, who is not stupid, and who was definitely of goodwill on this one, for all sorts of reasons, noble and ignoble, still ran into a brick wall, which is the way the Russians do things.
Yeah.
And whether, yes?
Well, I was just going to say, ran into a brick wall the way the Russians do things. I wonder if Biden, who's also having high-level talks yesterday with Olaf Scholz, of course, the Chancellor for Germany, he was talking about Nord Stream 2, perhaps saying there will be no Nord Stream 2 if Russia invades Ukraine, and also simultaneously urging all Americans to get out of the Ukraine, which doesn't really paint a very good picture for the diplomatic effort at the moment.
Pipeline, a proposed gas pipeline, Nord Stream 2. Yeah.
There's several things about this. The first of all is the French can negotiate without mentioning the pipeline because actually we're not getting gas from it, or not very much, because we're still self-reliant and produce 70% of our electricity with nuclear power, which the Greens are clamoring to stop, but which is actually giving France its energetic independence. And that was a political decision taken after the first oil crunch of 1973, and France reacted immediately and started this nuclear program, on which I think it's going to also be an issue in French politics, because everything comes back to it. So, but it's a good thing that the Germans are being told forcibly that the pipeline is on the table, because they rely entirely on this to not have to reopen more coal mines. They've got rid of all their nuclear plants because precisely they wanted to be very green, and now Olaf Scholz has got a coalition with the Greens and with the small, the German equivalent of the Lib Dems, if you will.
And Elizabeth, I just want, sorry to interrupt you, I'm very much enjoying talking to you, and I'm very much enjoying taking in your Parisian view. It's beautiful. Your balcony and those buildings behind you, it's very, very beautiful and whatever. And since you are there in Paris, so just one final question to you. Mr. Macron, so he heads off to Moscow yesterday, and he's obviously looking to pick up domestic votes in the election ahead. What are the chances he'll win?
In the election, I should say he has more chances of winning than anybody else. Every poll shows him ahead and shows him winning the first round between either him and Marine Le Pen or him and Éric Zemmour. He could lose to Valérie Pécresse. I have been watching the various campaigns, and I am very interested by Éric Zemmour's campaign, because it's like, right now it looks like the Trump campaign in America in 2016. And he's got exactly the same thing, those rallies that are attended by thousands of people, an incredible dynamic. I think France is not America, and we may not elect him, but he might be in the second round, which will be really interesting.
Anne-Elisabeth Moutet, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you for your insight and your analysis. Please come back on again. We'd love to talk to you for longer and about other subjects. But we'll say good morning to you and thanks for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Au revoir.
Au revoir, you're quite right.
Yeah,
that is so Parisian.
It's beautiful. I love Paris.
Do you?
Yeah, I love Paris.
I love Paris in the springtime.
I'm so glad you're singing it.
Let's take a break. Back to the headlines.
Keep going, keep going.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Conservative MPs are calling on the Prime Minister to withdraw his Jimmy Savile smear against the Labour leader after he was confronted near Parliament.
Good morning. The time just after 8 o'clock on this Tuesday, February the 8th. This is Breakfast on GB News. You're watching Eamonn and Isabel leading the news this morning.
Boris Johnson's being urged to apologise after Sir Keir Starmer was heckled by anti-vax protesters repeating his Jimmy Savile comments. Do you think the Prime Minister should apologise?
We're also talking about cyberbullying and online trolls and how to tackle them. Should our children be stopped from drinking sugary, caffeinated energy drinks? One would have thought that's long overdue.
Yeah, a recent study shows 1 in 3 British children are drinking them despite concerns over the impact on behaviour. Let us know your thoughts.
And West Ham defender Kurt Zouma has apologised after a video surfaced online of him kicking and slapping a cat. The video has since been taken down, but what punishment should he face for that? So the Prime Minister is facing demands from some Tory MPs to apologise for the Jimmy Savile smear he levelled at Sir Keir Starmer last week after police had to rescue the Labour leader last night from protesters in the Westminster area.
Well, officers escorted Starmer through a crowd of anti-vax protesters and bundled him into a car after he was accused of protecting paedophiles.
GB News political correspondent Tom Harwood live for us this morning on this, and he is across the reaction and what the Prime Minister said. And what do you think, Tom, about the pressure now on the Prime Minister to apologise?
There certainly is some pressure on the Prime Minister this morning, although it's interesting to note the names of his own party that have come forward saying that the Prime Minister is some way responsible for inciting the mob that we saw yesterday afternoon. It's the same sort of names that have already submitted letters to Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of the 1922 committee, the people that we might have expected to want the Prime Minister to go in any case. I do think it's worth visiting the context of what occurred yesterday afternoon. This was a protest that had gathered first outside Number 10 and secondly moving on to Parliament Square to protest both the government and the opposition over their support for vaccines mainly, but also COVID restrictions in general. And there were many other causes thrown in there as well. So this was a rabble of people who have been hanging around Westminster pretty consistently for the last year or so, who had gathered in response to the vaccine which they oppose. And it does seem to be a little bit curious, therefore, to argue that this was a rabble that was organised around the Jimmy Savile comments which occurred last week, when these were the same people who had been gathering in Westminster harassing journalists and politicians for many months now.
And look, Tom, you've been on the receiving end of this yourself, specifically, haven't you? This rabble, as you described them. I suppose the question is, what's the answer to this? You know, why are people being targeted in this way? How do we clean this situation up, not just in terms of safety, but perhaps in terms of language? We know, as you say, it's increased pressure on the Prime Minister. Indeed, his dear ally, Munira Mirza, saying that this was the cherry on the cake for her.
Yes, I have to stress the experience I had was not as distressing as it appeared the experience Keir Starmer had. I had some people come up around me during a broadcast and hurl the same sort of slurs. I was described as a pedo-protector in their words, presumably because they see all media as part of an establishment. Perhaps it's something to do with the QAnon conspiracy theories in the United States, but some pretty vile things have been shouted at journalists like myself doing our jobs outside Westminster. Someone else who was harassed and harangued over the summer was the BBC's Nick Watt, who was chased back into Downing Street for people shouting words like traitor, the same sort of words that were thrown at Keir Starmer yesterday. This is a group of people who have been around for some time. It is interesting to me that the same faces keep popping up in these videos, and perhaps there are mechanisms, whether they be restraining orders or anything else, that can prevent these known harassers from continuing to distress and cause commotion around politicians and journalists alike.
Tom, are we hearing anything from Sir Keir on this, his reaction to last night, or indeed does he need to say more about his role at that time? You know, to converse with these people, just converse in general and say, look, this was my role, and just make it clear that what Boris Johnson said was inaccurate.
I think that would be indulging this too much. Ultimately, this rabble, this mob, this attack, if we want to call it that, would have occurred were those Jimmy Savile comments made or not. Most of the shouts, if people go and watch those videos again, and there are videos from multiple angles, it sounds like there's only one woman who shouts about Jimmy Savile, and other people are shouting about various things from the New World Order to the Magna Carta to the opposition not opposing. This was a varied protest, and I think to pin it all on Jimmy Savile comments would be to misunderstand what went on yesterday afternoon. It seems that the idea that Keir Starmer would not have been attacked were people to realise that his role was one overseeing the Crown Prosecution Service and not directly involved in the Jimmy Savile case is to give too much credence to the cretins who shouted at him and went after him. Ultimately, these people make it their business to go after politicians, shout at politicians, and the idea that they would or would not have done that based on what's said at the dispatch box in Parliament seems to me to stretch the realms of credibility.
Well, OK. Very, very powerful stuff there, Tom. Thank you very much indeed for clearing all of that up. If you've got a view on this, at GB News, let us know. Headlines on this Tuesday. Boris Johnson has warned Russian President Vladimir Putin Britain will not flinch as tensions between Russia and Ukraine continue.
He's been writing in the Times newspaper today, saying the Prime Minister is considering dispatching RAF Typhoon fighters and Royal Navy warships to support the NATO Defence Alliance.
Pornography sites will soon be legally required to verify the age of their users. The online safety bill will require companies to put robust checks in place to stop children accessing harmful content.
Shoppers spending more on furniture and household goods helped retail sales bounce back last month. The latest figures show they were up nearly 12% compared to the same time last year.
A new study suggests energy drinks could be harmful to children, causing headaches, trouble sleeping and stomach problems. 1 in 3 young people drink them, and there are now calls to ban their sale to under 18s.
Meanwhile, getting more sleep may be a handy way of shedding those extra pounds and getting in shape. New research suggests getting an extra hour in bed or more per night shaves around 270 calories off people's daily diets. That's the equivalent of 3 chocky bickies.
The RSPCA is condemning a very upsetting video of West Ham defender Kurt Zouma kicking and slapping his cat. The footballer has apologised after footage of the incident was posted online.
And the Duchess of Cambridge will become the new voice of CBeebies' famous bedtime story, this time to mark Children's Mental Health Week. She's planning to read The Owl Who Was Afraid of the Dark by Jill Tomlinson, and it will debut at 10 to 7 on Sunday.
8:10 is the time.
I just think I'm looking forward to that on Sunday night. It's just
What
about
you're
the time.
looking for?
Well, I am actually, yeah. Well, it's a bit different.
Would you play that for your kids?
Yeah, I would, yeah. We often
Yeah.
do the bedtime stories, and loads of big names have done it, like Tom Hardy, Giovanna Fletcher. It's like the in thing to do. Lots of people try and do the CBeebies bedtime story. And I actually think the Duchess of Cambridge has a really beautiful voice.
Do you?
Very soothing, pretty, feminine voice. So it'd be nice. I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, sorry. I digress. Let's
No,
move
you
on.
don't digress. No, it's very interesting. Okay. Remember, if it's important to you, it's important to us.
I'm sure someone agrees with me somewhere.
I do agree. No, it's very nice. Listen, there is nothing, I suppose, when we look back to our fondest memories as a child, there's very little that beats your parents reading a bedtime story.
No, it's so
to
true.
you.
And the school drills that into you. They always say, you'll never find your kid turn you down if you offer to snuggle up and read a book with them. It's a really precious moment for them, feeling
My
close.
kids did.
They didn't like it.
No, what they didn't like is, you see, I liked to embellish the story. So they knew what the book was.
And
the
you would
story
go
was.
off on a tangent.
And I would go off on a tangent and make bits up.
I know what
and
that's
I also used sound effects.
Okay.
So I would say something like, and he huffed.
And he puffed. That's great.
Blew the house down. And they would say, will you stop doing that? And I'd say, then the door suddenly opened. And the Wicked Witch came through.
Guys, I hope the bosses at CBeebies are watching. They could
worked for
line you up.
CBeebies.
Yeah,
I
you used
did
to Biggleton.
Biggleton.
You used to sing the intro song.
Biggleton,
Yeah, actually, my little ones used to sing along with Uncle Eamonn to that song.
So, no, I do think Isabel's absolutely right. I mean, the lovely, fondest memories of reading to your child. And the thing I remember as well as a child, the storybooks. We used to have a compilation of Hans Christian Andersen stories.
Oh, gorgeous.
And you opened them up and the illustrations.
So beautiful.
So beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, all the Beatrix Potter books. I loved Millie Molly Mandy as a child. It really just transports me all. Anyway, there's so many children's books but when they're a bit older, but the ones my children are still into are all the sort of Julia Donaldson stories. And The Owl That Was Afraid of the Dark is going to be a hit as well. I'm looking forward to it.
It's now 13 minutes past 8, and here's some really bad news, shocking statistics from February to March. Last year, there was an 800% increase in searches in how to handle internet trolls.
Yeah, this was during the first lockdown of COVID, when our reliance on staying connected with our friends and family really increased, but so unfortunately did the potential for negative and potentially harmful experiences.
Mental health charities have warned of the direct link between online trolling and suicide attempts, and they've now boosted the online safety campaign, Be Kind. Let's go to Alice Hendy. Alice is the founder of online safety tool, Ripple. Alice, what do we mean by a safety tool? What is Ripple?
Hi, good morning, Eamonn. Good morning, Isabel. So Ripple is a digital tool which, if a user searches for harmful content online, they will first be guided through a filter of breathing exercises and then a very simple, uncluttered and calmly presented strategies and forums, helplines and mental health services that they can access both now and in the longer term, accompanied with messages of hope, really, and encouragement to keep safe. The idea is that Ripple is intercepting any people out there who might be struggling and searching for methods or ways, unfortunately, to self-harm or take their own life.
Alice, I'm fascinating to know that one of the first things you come across with this tool is to control your breathing. What does that say? What does that mean? What are you trying to do with asking someone to control their breathing?
It's really a case of interrupting somebody's thought process. It's a gentle, calming strategy that has been statistically proven to help that person reset what it is they're thinking. If they're carrying out online searches of this nature, they're clearly struggling and really in crisis mode. And the idea is that the short breathing exercise at the beginning enables that person to stop, pause, reflect on what they're doing, and then they're presented with those mental health facilities and services that are available for them to access.
Alice, you've created this incredible internet tool, and you've done that because you've been through the worst of experiences, and you tragically lost your brother, I know, in November 2020. So that was the year that we're talking about, of those really difficult lockdowns for so many people on their mental health. Your brother was just in his 20s at the time, and after he passed away, it was then that you found out he'd been accessing these forums that had helped him to find ways to take his own life. And I mean, that just strikes me as unbelievable how easy it is for people who are feeling vulnerable to find that kind of content. Obviously shocked you into setting up Ripple.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously when we lost my brother Josh on the 25th of November 2020, I was just, I mean, it was almost like a bomb going off in our living room, to be honest. And I was desperate to find answers, you know, what was going on in his life, what could have been so bad that he thought that was perhaps his only option. And when I looked through his devices, his mobile and his laptop, I did find that he was looking at these really harmful websites, forums, and so on. It's not just social media accounts here that are potentially to blame for some of the online material that shouldn't be present. It's also websites and forums as well. So really, I'm calling on the Online Harms Bill to go a step further. It's fantastic that the government have recently been making real good headway, really, into promoting the Online Harms Bill and holding organisations to account. But it isn't just the social media companies, it's those websites as well that need to be dealt with.
Yeah. Today is Safer Internet Day. And the disturbing thing about all of this is the massive increase there are from people in searches for how to avoid trolling and how to spot a troll. The thing that really surprises me about that is I would have thought it was quite obvious.
It can be. In other ways, it can be really, really difficult, actually, to realise that what's happening to you is trolling. And the data from SEMrush with how to avoid trolling searches, they've suggested that has actually doubled. So 200% increase in the last 2 years of how to avoid trolling. People don't know how to deal with it. People don't know what the characteristics are of trolling. And effectively, the advice is, if you wouldn't say something to somebody in person, please don't think it's acceptable to say it to somebody over the internet, because the impact that some comments can make on somebody's mental health can often be catastrophic.
And Alice, you know, I can't even imagine what it's like to lose a loved one in the way that you did with your brother. Words just can't even express it, I'm sure. But if you had the chance to speak to your brother and reassure him in a way that I'm sure your charity is trying to reassure anyone else that's feeling vulnerable, do you think that his death could have been prevented? And you know, does it feel like just a horrendous waste of a young life?
It does, completely. Josh was 21. He had his whole life ahead of him. He was my only sibling. These websites and forums helped him do what he did. They provided him with tips, encouragement, guidance on how to complete suicide. And I feel like it's my mission and my duty now as somebody bereaved by suicide, to represent all of the families that have lost somebody in the same way as myself and try to stop this happening to any other families. And I said right from the beginning when I set up this charity, like many other people who have been bereaved by suicide, if I can stop just one person from doing this, then I would have achieved what I've set out to do. And I'm more than overwhelmed to say that Ripple so far has actually saved 22 people from taking their life due to intercepting their online searches. It's a free tool for schools, colleges, universities, parents to download en masse if they wanted to. And that really is my life goal now. I feel like I've got a purpose.
Oh, Alice, that's so moving.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
And when you say a free tool, you mean an app? Is that what you mean?
No, Ripple is a browser extension. So that means it can be downloaded on Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge browsers. Just simply type in Ripple tool, or you can look at my website, which is ripplesuicideprevention.com, and I've put some instruction videos on exactly how to download it. It literally takes 60 seconds. And once installed, it's an additional layer of protection, safety, because you really don't know what people are looking at on the internet. And I strongly believe that if this had been around a year prior, I might still have my brother here with me.
Well, our condolences to you on the loss of your brother, and we salute you in what you have done in helping people or helping other families not to go through what you have gone through. Alice Hendy, thank you very much indeed. Her tool is Ripple. Thank you, Alice. Ripple. So Google that.
What an incredibly strong young lady, and to, she's 22 lives that she knows of that she saved. I'm sure there's a lot more that she doesn't know about. So well done, Alice, for turning a tragedy into something so
positive. And also,
positive.
from a social service point of view, there is so little support because there just isn't the finance for it to support people who've got suicidal thoughts, and it's a very, very difficult thing. So
huge problem, especially in young men.
Yeah, any layer that you can bring to that, the better. Coming up, 1 in 3 children are consuming energy drinks. Should they be? We'll be talking about that next. GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Right, what is your view? What is your stance on fizzy drinks for your kids?
Oh, guess what my stance is?
Zero tolerance.
They're only allowed one squash per day. The rest of the time it's water.
See, I'm a fun parent.
Yeah, no, you're a nightmare parent.
I give them anything.
I know.
And that's why I had mad children, really.
You didn't. Your kids are awesome.
But no, I wouldn't have been that strict, but I should have been, because as a kid, you drink fizzy drinks and whatever it is, and then you get a fizzy adult. And I'm a fizzy adult. I mean, I drink ridiculous amount of soft drinks.
Yeah, well, that's what your third.
That's true, I'm not denying
I know.
I mean, you do wine, I do.
Yeah, no, this is true. Look, and we're adults, but what about kids?
Yeah.
Recent studies reveal 1 in 3 British children are consuming these energy drinks, which is so often packed full of things like caffeine, which then have huge impacts, not just on behaviour, but on learning and behaviour within the classroom.
Get a load of this. So a single 250 millilitre can of anything might contain about as much caffeine as a double espresso on that. So let's go to Claire Thornton-Wood, who's a paediatric dietitian. And so we're going to talk now. Claire, good morning to you. Lovely to see you.
Good morning.
Claire, we're going to talk about the impact of this. The thing I find strange is that we have to wait to this latest study to be talking about this. One would have thought this was pretty obvious, that parents should be keeping a big eye on these fizzy drinks in particular. And, you know, there's fizzy drinks and there's fizzy drinks. I mean, there's cordials and then there's things that are just turbocharged, aren't there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised by the results of the study. I know that young people are drinking lots of energy drinks. I mean, the British Dietetic Association, which is my professional body, and I'm a spokesperson for them, they've been sort of working on this for really quite a long time, saying that we should not be, allowing children really to have energy drinks. They're just not a good thing for children.
They're marketed as energy drinks, isn't it? I mean, they're very often sort of associated with sports, or you're going off to a football tournament, you need your, I'm going to pick one brand, but other brands are available, your Lucozade or whatever, packed not just full of caffeine, but of course tons and tons of sugar. They're not really energy drinks, are they? They're just terrible drinks.
Yeah, I mean, there's stimulants. I mean, there's 2 different types. There's the type that have loads of sugar in, and that brings its own difficulties, obviously, with, rising obesity. There's, I think, 13 and upwards of teaspoons of sugar often in them. And then you've actually got the other ones that are 0 calories, and they're often used by people who have disordered eating because they give them a kind of stimulant boost. They sort of wake them up, give them what they think is energy, even though it's not really energy, and it actually enables them not to eat. And so that's also a problem.
Gosh, yeah, it is complicated. I mean, the older I get, I genuinely believe, Claire, we are being fed poisons, very, very, in various forms, from biscuits to chocolate bars to, all sorts of processed, microwavable food, whatever. And I am just aghast at how little the government seems to do about all of this. The food industry must be so strong and so powerful that they can basically pump us full of anything.
I think, it is at the end of the day personal choice what people choose to eat and drink, but obviously children are a very influential.
I don't agree. I think when you go into a supermarket or you go into a service station or whatever, your choice is very limited. Unless you say to yourself, I am only drinking water, I'm not really sure what you get there, be it orange juice, be it an energy drink, be it a standard, Coca-Cola, whatever it happens to be. I think your choice is very limited, and I think our influence is very limited.
I think the best thing is to drink water. I mean, from a sustainability perspective as well, by far the best thing actually is to take your own drink of water. If you were in a service station, a better option would be to buy some water, probably. If not, it would be to buy more of a milk-based drink, because apart from it not being an energy drink, you've also got the added benefits of the milk or plant-based milk. You've got the calcium in there for your bones. It's a problem with everything, isn't it? Because it's like if you go into any shop and you want to buy a snack, ironically, the cheapest thing you can buy usually is one of their really cheap packets of biscuits. If you wanted to buy a banana or an apple, that would actually cost you more, yet, you know, in health terms, it's much better for you.
It is interesting because obviously what Eamonn's touching on is the whole debate about the role of the state in kind of decisions for parents, and obviously lots of people would say it's about better education. But I once heard this really brilliant bit of advice, and it is not probably the fun parent approach, that's for sure. But the advice was, if you walked into a supermarket or a service station and you were a caveman, what would you recognise in a modern-day supermarket? Would you recognise things wrapped in plastic and silver foil and that's been in tins for weeks and weeks? Or would you go straight to the area which has got the fruit and the vegetables that you've seen and can recognise that have come from the ground, or the meat that looks familiar still? And if it's not something that a caveman would recognise, it's probably not that good for you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good analogy, actually. We should be trying to choose foods that is as close to its natural state as we possibly can. I mean, and we do have a responsibility for that ourselves and as parents. But I do agree that the state does have a role in, you know, trying to direct things to a certain extent.
Claire, just finally, you know, as a paediatric dietitian, your view on seeing this report, what should parents do as regards children's choice? So they say, Mummy, Daddy, whatever, I want a pop, soda, fizzy drink. Your view on how much and how often, if at all?
I mean, it's wrong to demonise food. So the more you sort of say that it's forbidden, the more someone will want it. So I think it's reasonable, depending on the age of your child, to perhaps say, you know, that on a Friday night maybe you can have one fizzy drink, or, you know, if you're going to a party or something. But I don't think it should be something that forms part of anyone's usual diet. You know, it's a treat food. And certainly in, you know, very young children, I really don't think fizzy drinks have any place at all in their diets. And it's worth speaking to them a little bit about.
OK, Claire is a paediatric dietitian, and that's in reaction to the story up to 1 in 3 children consuming caffeinated energy drinks. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, got to keep it for treats. The dentist said the same, chocolate and snacks only for Saturdays. My kids are horrified.
I mean, I remember as a kid, you mentioned Lucozade, lovely drink. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. But it's you know...
It's poison.
It's poison. And do you know what the advertising tag on it was? Lucozade aids recovery. Yeah, and Mars Bar helps you work, rest and play. But really all they're doing is not
poisoning you. Good on a hangover, both of those things. Anyway.
Back with the papers right after this, Nicola. GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Right, the time is 8:34. It's time to go through your morning newspapers. Today we're joined by Martin Daubney, who's the Deputy Leader of the Reclaim Party, and Amy Cameron, who is an environmental campaigner. Very warm welcome back.
Morning.
Look, we started our first paper review this morning by talking about attempts to try and sort out youngsters accessing porn. Lots of people got in touch actually on that, and we'll come back to what the viewers have been saying. But Martin, I know that this is something that you have a, dare I say, a specialism in. I mean, you've done research.
That's a hands-on experience.
Look, you've done, seriously, on a serious note, you've done research into the impact of porn on young people. And just tell us, first of all, what you found and then what you make of the way this is being covered and
the online safety bill.
It.
That's what's all to do.
Right, so in a previous life, I edited Lads Mag Loaded. In fact, Eamonn, you're a great friend of ours. You often would come to our lunches and you're in the magazine.
Yeah.
And then...
I was such a pin-up.
You were.
In those days.
You really were. You became a great friend of the magazine.
Page 3 of your time.
But then online pornography became very politicised during the David Cameron era, where the Daily Mail, God bless it, still going 9 years later, attempted to sort of clear up the internet by introducing age verification. Now, way back in 2013, I fronted a documentary for Channel 4 called Porn on the Brain, and we recruited 19 young lads who felt they were addicted to porn, and we put them in a brain scan study. And we showed that their brains were behaving like heroin brains or cocaine brains. They were responding to pornography in a way that just drove them into this kind of state. And then we were talking about...
They were aware their behaviour was abnormal or heightened or whatever, were they?
Because it was affecting their livelihoods, it was affecting their ability to hold down a job, it was certainly affecting their ability to hold down a relationship, and it was affecting their attitude towards women in an unhealthy way. So what we attempted to do was have a constructive conversation about what to do about this. And what we shouldn't attempt to do about this is to switch off the internet. It's just wrong-headed, numbskulled policy.
Well, why do you say that?
Because it can't work. I've spoken to about 50,000 teenagers across Britain since then. And as I said earlier, from the very elite schools to the most sort of council estate, rough and tumble schools. And the problem is the same. And that is unfettered access just leads to a changing, particularly amongst young men. But it's not a damaging change. It's something that can be talked about, but it won't be ever solved by trying to close down the internet, because, prohibition and censorship never, ever works, and it won't here.
Amy, you take a different approach to this story, and you accept that probably you're never going to be able to kill it off in that sense, because it's also the whack-a-mole approach. Yeah. But do you really think we should just wash our hands of trying to clean it up at all and just let our youngsters, go and find what they want and try and educate them on how best to manage that?
I think it has to be both. I don't disagree with you, Martin. I think that hopefully what this prompts is a wider conversation about the role of porn on the brains and the behaviours of particularly young men, but young people across the board. Yeah. I think we can differentiate as well here to some extent on age. Like, yes, I agree. I suspect come high school playgrounds, teenagers will work out ways around this. But we also know that, under 10s are being exposed to pornography while surfing the internet. We can't switch the internet off. It's way too important for education, for socialising, etc., etc. But I think we can ask these extremely wealthy tech giants to be doing their bit. That seems reasonable. All too often, I think we put the onus on parents. Yeah. And we ask parents who, frankly, know less about the internet often than their children do. We ask them to try to sort of police the behaviour of their kids. But in the same way that we expect the state to keep our streets safe, to an extent, and yes, of course, parents advise, we should think about the internet in the same sort of terms, I think. We have a responsibility to keep it a safe environment.
So there's an interesting piece today by Louis Theroux, who's also talking about this, and he's saying, I've got 3 sons, and he's talked to them about this, and I've been asked by so many parents, how do I have this conversation with kids? And here's what you do. Just say, if you see anything online and it worries you or concerns you, come and talk to me. Make sure there's an open door. Don't judge them, don't shame them, and certainly don't try and censor them, because they will find a way around it and you'll drive it underground and make it more secretive. You have to be open-minded, and that takes guts.
I just find that so hard as a mother of a boy. I'm not sure I'm going to say to my kids any of those things. It just makes me want to run for the hills, honestly. And I do think it's hard because... look, people are going to disagree with me here, but I think a lot of decision makers and a lot of people in authority are men, probably consumers of large amounts of porn, and perhaps don't have a problem with it. And they don't perhaps want to tackle it. And also there's a level of embarrassment in talking about this. You're viewed perhaps as being prudish or old-fashioned if you are concerned about this. And, you know, it really scares me. My son is 6 years old, and I look at him and I think, how many years of innocence have we got left before he starts to see graphic, hardcore abuse of women in
about another 5
objectified ways? Probably about 5 years, and that devastates me. We've had lots of emails on this. Melanie said, it's well known in teaching that porn's shared amongst children through WhatsApp. It has worryingly become an epidemic. If WhatsApp and porn sites were held responsible, like gambling sites are, then we wouldn't have this problem. No young people ever use gambling sites. Stephen says, porn sites et al. Website authorization filters are more for show than effect. To reduce the audience will reduce advertising revenue. And that's also a point, isn't it? These porn industries, there's no vested interest in losing potential consumers with lifelong addictions.
No, and I think that's right? And that's why it does need government regulation. We can't ask this industry to self-censor. They simply will not. There is no business case for that. But I think it is right that we hold them to account. No one knows their platforms better than them. And I think there's a level of simple expectation that we should place on people who are profiteering, often on, as you've said, Isabel, quite abusive content. Not all porn. I think you can have a healthy relationship with porn to some extent, but I think there is violent and extreme content that we cannot expose young people to. Let's do both. Let's regulate them and ask them to step up, but also, to your point, Martin, I think, yes, let's have a proper conversation with young people.
It's really worth pointing out, and one of the things that used to really concern me about this was that porn was being weaponised against young men. And they were being told they were rapists in waiting and they were dangerous sex predators. Just simply not the case. The vast majority of young men are sensible, switched on, compassionate, wonderful people. So let's not demonise men through porn.
No, it's just exploiting a natural urge. That's the tragedy of it all, isn't it? OK, let's move on.
Yeah.
Front page of The Sun, and this is an animal abuse story, and obviously this is getting a lot of attention and a lot of reaction from you guys. It's a Premier League footballer who plays for West Ham, Kurt Zouma, and he was filmed literally kicking his cat like a football across his kitchen floor. He's also seen slapping his cat's face, and West Ham has condemned his actions, and they say they will deal with the matter internally. Good enough?
I'm not convinced, and Isabel, you mentioned this earlier. I will be keen to see whether there is a formal response from the RSPCA or the like. I think if there's one thing that Britain can really unite around, it is our love of animals and our love of pets. And this kind of content is shocking. I think it is shocking, both why it happened, why it was shared, a lot of questions around this. And I don't, this is clearly not appropriate, and I do hope further action is taken beyond just the front pages.
And is there a problem, Martin, do you think, with footballers, just to broaden this out? I mean, these are people who have really quite grotesque levels of wealth, which isolates them from normal society. Perhaps not the same levels of education as people in their same
But Isabel, that could be going on anywhere. That's the thing. I mean, he's a role model. He's in the public eye. Who knows? But certainly you guys at home, Julie says he should face punishment. A teacher recently went to court and lost her job for abuse of a pony. He should be fined at least a year's wages, and West Ham should get rid of him. Well, he certainly should be made to work for an animal charity and donate to an animal charity, I would have thought.
Yeah, I think what's happened with footballers at the moment, and again, they are so cretinous that they film this stuff and they put it out there. It's like, if you're going to do something so dumb, don't film it. And don't... do you know what I mean? It's just... again,
there's much rational thought going on.
That detachment, that entitlement, that wealth gap, that failure to understand what makes normal working people furious.
Yeah.
OK, let's turn our attention to a finishing. What should we finish on? What do we fancy ending on? Should we talk about chimps using insect lotion to treat cuts, according to scientists on a research expedition in Gabon? Amy, you've chosen the story in the Times.
Yes, I think building on the animal theme, but in a more positive direction.
Yes, let's do that to end the high.
I have to admit to being biased on this. I love chimpanzees. I find them absolutely fascinating, and I think we learn more about them all the time. So this is a study where they observed chimps catching insects in the air, crushing them in their hands, mixing them with saliva, and then applying them to wounds.
Wow.
I just think it's fascinating. We learn so much about the animal kingdom all the time. And as we said before, this is something that let's find some stories we can all get on board with, even Martin and I.
Even Martin.
As far as I know, you've got no anti-chimp sentiments,
Come on,
Martin.
Let's
give it a go.
There you go.
Chimp remind me of myself.
You've always be careful with chimps because they throw things at you, usually poo.
Yeah, they
Poo
do.
on the ground, and then they throw things at you, so they're
fact?
smart.
Yeah,
that is a fact. Why do you not believe anything I say?
I worked in a zoo for a month.
On the ground, and then they lift it and they say, "Look at her," boom, and they fire it at you.
I've gone off chimps all of a sudden.
They're quite defensible for cameras and things.
Yeah, they're sort of fascinating, intelligent, and depraved all at the same time, much like the rest of us.
Much like the rest of us. Much like the rest of us. Guys, very good talking to you both. Thanks for your analysis and your entertainment throughout the morning. That's Martin Dobney and Amy Cameron. Thank you both. Thank you.
OK, the time's 8:45. We're going to turn our attention now to find out your thoughts on some of the issues of the day. We've been out and about, getting your reactions to some of the top stories of recent days, from the Prime Minister Boris Johnson to the cost of living. Here's what some of you had to say.
You should think about stepping down, yeah. I think after, you know, the sort of the hardship everyone's gone through, and that's thrown in our faces, I think definitely you should think about stepping down and letting someone take over from there.
I like Boris. I'm a fan. I mean, he's done some questionable things, but at the end of the day, who's the better alternative? So I'm all for Boris at the moment.
Should Boris Johnson go? I think he should, but I can't see the alternative at the moment. So it's probably best to stay where he is.
OK, and are you angered by the fact that he had all of these events and parties at number 10, and yet people have been locked up in COVID and obeyed the rules?
Yeah, I think it's quite frustrating, because when you think of everybody else that went through what they went through, and then they seem to do what they want to do. And they have parties and they can meet up and they call it work dues, and it's not really a work do. I mean, everybody else, and people are suffering. I mean, in my family, we've had funerals with only a few people there, but there's a lot of people wanting to be there to celebrate their life, and they can't do it. But they're having parties.
I think it has. I think it has for everybody, even the price of a coffee. I mean, Starbucks used to be £3, now £6 for a coffee and a biscuit. It's quite steep, but yeah, it is. It's tough. It's tough for everybody. It's gone up, for sure.
I think it's not fair enough for other people that got low income, but they have to pay more tax, and of course, the people that are on the top, and they're earning more than us, and then and they're not paying that much tax on income.
Yeah, it's becoming more expensive. So it's just because I'm a student here, so it's not only the renting, but also the eating stuff that is getting more expensive day by day.
Has the cost of living gone up, and if so, why?
For me at the moment, no, but I expect it to. I've got direct debits of my utility bills are going to go up. I know they are.
Time for our teledoc spot today, and our doctor is Dr. Veena Babu today. Thank you very much indeed. Lovely seeing you, Veena. You're welcome to the studio. And so we've got questions in from our viewers, and the first one is from Tom and our listeners. I keep forgetting, of course.
Yeah, don't forget we're on radio.
We're by something or other, aren't we? By something, anyway.
Are we?
Tom says, I've been trying to sort out my ongoing neck problem.
Simulcasting. There you go, as you were.
Tom's neck is so strained from sitting at his desk, and you'll get, Veena, a lot of people saying that they've got bad posture as a result.
I'm getting it.
We sit on very uncomfortable bar stools, which we have to shuffle about quite a lot, and they're cheap, aren't they?
I wouldn't dare to comment.
I can feel the metal right through onto my buttocks.
Ooh.
So there's no cushioning. There's no cushioning. But anyway, people stuck at desks. You can hear me creaking.
Yeah, they can.
Yeah. Any exercises that can help with that?
Definitely. I think now, even with working from home, people who even weren't sitting on desks for a long time might be slouched on beds, and posture is so important for your spine. So first things first, if your work can provide you with an ergonomic chair, that's the most ideal thing.
Ergonomic means friendly to your body shape.
To your spine,
Yeah,
yes.
all right,
So not body shape specifically, but to the shape of your spine.
Mhm.
You want it to sit comfortably with like a neck support. If you can't have that, you can get these add-on supports you can buy on Amazon, anywhere online, that you can just attach to your chair. So every time you sit, rather than straining and sitting straight, it puts a lot of pressure on your discs. Think about it, your entire head, the weight of your head is being held by the entire pressure of your spine, and that can kind of over time put strain on the muscles here. So that's what you don't want to do. So you want to get some kind of support so you can slouch a bit, you can reduce the angle and the pressure on your spine, and some simple exercises. Do you guys do any exercises throughout the day?
Never stop. Never stop. I'm a non-stop exercise machine, but I'm always willing to learn more.
So something as simple as just even movement, so even side to side, and holding it for about 10 seconds, and then extending all the way up. We don't often do this, but looking up.
I feel the stretch.
Lovely. It's like doing the paper review.
And then to each side, and even again holding it from the opposite hand, about 10 to 15 seconds.
Restriction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even doing something like that and making sure you're not sitting for lots of hours in the day. So every couple of hours, getting up, going for a 1-minute walk, that can help.
It's
So
like,
important,
It's like abuse,
isn't it?
us being caged in here for 3.5 hours, never allowed to move.
I also think we could be on a flight somewhere in that time. Anyway, Dr. Babu, I want to ask you, because there's stuff in the news today about cancer. We've also got a question from one of our viewers or listeners, Michelle, about it. So there's two things I want to talk to you about. This first one is about breast cancer, and we hear this a lot. People have got breast cancer in the family, and it really worries them. She says, both my mum and my dad's side of the family have a history of breast cancer diagnosis. How often should I be seeing the doctor to check in and see if there's anything developing?
That's a fair question, isn't it? So any woman over the age of 30 should be examining herself quite regularly, examining the breasts in the shower at night to see if you can feel any lumps, any nipple changes, any skin changes, any abnormal discharge that shouldn't be there. If there is any of those symptoms, please go and see your GP.
Okay.
In terms of someone like Michelle, if she's had a family history of more than 2 members, first-degree relatives, then what we should do is actually see her GP, because she might be viable to have some genetic testing done.
OK, that's good advice. And there's a story today about women with aggressive womb cancer getting new immunotherapy treatment on the NHS, which is really a really positive story. And apparently this new treatment's equivalent to chemotherapy in terms of its success rate. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, so this specific immunotherapy can actually help reduce aggressive forms of womb cancer. The thing with womb cancer is it presents quite late. It presents after the age of 50. It's often quite aggressive. It's quite insidious in the way it presents, so women may just have a bit of bloating, a bit of abdominal pain.
Right.
It presents in postmenopausal women with symptoms like bleeding, which shouldn't really happen in postmenopausal women, right? So as of now, there's only chemotherapy as a mainstay of treatment. So with this coming in, it can actually change the game.
Wow,
Yeah.
fantastic.
A number of queries, I'm just putting them together here. People who have relatives suffering from dementia or a diagnosis of Alzheimer's. Basically what people want to know, do brain quizzes work? Do they reduce the symptoms? Do they keep your mind active? Puzzles, crosswords, whatever. What's your view?
It doesn't reduce the rate at progression of the disease, I have to be honest, because it is a neurodegenerative disease.
Yeah.
However, your brain, a large component of it is a muscle. Any muscle that we work or exercise gets stronger. So definitely keep the mind engaged. Sudoku, number quizzes, word, Scrabble, crossword puzzles, or even simple reading, short stories to see if you can retain the stories. Something as simple as that would be helpful.
So I don't fully understand. So it doesn't help in the sense that it is a degenerative disease, but it does help in that it delays onset or something?
No, so it can help in terms of day-to-day progression, right? So doing this won't, in essence, cure you, or it won't mean that you don't need to take medication, but it does mean that in your day-to-day quality of life, you might be using your brain a bit more and you might find a bit of happiness.
So it could keep you out of a nursing home, for example, that little bit longer. If you're using your brain, you may be able to keep your independence a little bit longer if you are going downhill with Alzheimer's. OK, that's really good advice.
Now, I'm not asking you to be a personal trainer here, but this is Julie, and she says, right, she's gone to the gym. She started back at the gym. It hurts her, especially in her legs, very sore after a session. What about my legs, my calves, my thighs? How do I work out how to stop the pain?
Okay, firstly, Julie, well done for working out. That's amazing. We all want all of us to work out. So it's a good sign when you're sore after an exercise. It just means your muscles are kind of breaking and expanding and building more muscle. It's a very good sign. Two things. She can apply ice for 20 minutes, up to 3 times a day on the joints, so the knees and the ankles.
Yeah.
And she can apply a bit of heat to the actual muscle area for about 20 minutes, 3 times a day as well. And keep stretching before and after exercise. And it will get better.
See, I think of my mum, God love her, in her 70s. If she feels a muscle strain after exercise, she's like, oh, I've overdone it.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to take a lie down and make sure. And it's like, no, Mum, it's normal for your muscles to ache after you've had exercise to hurt. No pain, no gain.
Yeah.
But she won't listen.
Where do you stand on ice baths and things? As my trainer, yes, I do have a trainer. My trainer, he's a great advocate for this, but so far what we've done is we've got my feet, my ankles, now up to my knees in iced water, and he says it's very good for circulation and things. What's your view on ice baths?
It definitely works.
Cold
it definitely
showers?
works. Yes, it does. It helps boost the blood supply, in essence, increasing oxygen supply,
Yes.
making the area more vascular, improves recovery, and will just make sure you can do more as time goes on.
But what about doing that just before bed? Because that would potentially really stimulate.
It depends when you
'Cause
work
I like
out,
a nice,
right?
I like a nice warm shower before bed.
Yeah.
But
So you
probably
wouldn't
not
just do that for fun, just jump
okay.
in the ice shower, but before a training session or after a training
Yeah.
session, when do
Okay.
you do it?
Do you think it's making me look younger?
Well, on TV, you've always looked younger. Like, I don't know.
No, I mean in
This
real
is
life.
very-
In real life,
I don't think I'm qualified to answer this question.
But anyway, it's an in thing. It's growing. A lot of people want to do it. A lot of people are quite frightened about it. But yeah, that's your new thing in the morning.
Absolutely not.
Cold shower.
Draw the line at that.
I did it last summer.
Did
For
you?
the showers cold in the morning because I thought, well, it's quite warm outside and whatever it is.
I reject all forms of cold.
Yeah. I'm going to send you a video of me doing it
Are
tonight.
you?
I'll do that.
That's a treat. Dr. Bina Babu, lovely to have you on. Our first time with you on the
Not
show.
the
We'll
shower,
have you
my
back.
feet. I didn't mean the cold shower. I meant my feet and all that sort of thing. Eamonn, very good, as Isabel said. Please come back again
Thank you for having me.
for the Telly Doctor slot. Thank
Yeah,
you very
love
much.
it. Thanks. OK, stay with us. After the break, we're talking about National Apprenticeship Week. A really heartwarming story, actually, to go into with all of that. And we'll have your showbiz. That's after this short break and your forecast.
Hello, a very good morning to you. A mild start for most of us, bright for many actually throughout much of today, but a lingering zone of cloud and rain will affect parts of northern England, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland. Here's the weather front responsible. It's dividing the country today between mild but cloudy southern parts, brighter but colder northern areas. So for central and northern Scotland, here it is a chilly start to the day with showers arriving, particularly for northern and western Scotland, along with a brisk breeze with gales to the far northwest. Snow falling above 300 or 400 metres. Northern Ireland, meanwhile, southern Scotland, northern England stays cloudy and in places fairly damp, particularly northwest England. But to the south again, across much of the rest of England, much of Wales, brighter skies, even some sunshine coming through. And where we get some sunshine, 14 Celsius is possible. And actually that weather front remains in place more or less throughout Tuesday evening, but eventually during Tuesday night it starts to push south, initially into North Wales, northwest England, some heavier bursts of rain for a time before the rain peters out as it pushes into South Wales, the Midlands, by the end of the night. To the south, 9 Celsius, so another mild night to come. But to the north, clearer spells for northern England, Northern Ireland, Scotland as well. And it turns progressively colder in Scotland. So initially snow falling to 400 metres, eventually snow perhaps falling to the surface across northern Scotland and certainly settling above 200 metres for the likes of the West Highlands. Meanwhile, there will be some sunshine away from the showers for Northern Ireland, Northern England and increasingly the Midlands into Wales as well as colder, brighter air filters southwards. 12 Celsius though for London under a lot of cloud on Wednesday, but those brighter skies by the end of Thursday affect most of us and Friday's looking bright, but on the cold side.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Calls on the Prime Minister to withdraw his Jimmy Savile comments against the Labour leader after Sir Keir Starmer is confronted by protesters.
Good morning. It's 9 o'clock on Tuesday, February the 8th. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
And leading the news this morning, Boris Johnson is being urged to apologise after Sir Keir Starmer was heckled by anti-vax protesters, repeating his Jimmy Savile comments.
So we're asking this morning, do you think the Prime Minister should apologise? What's the answer to this problem? Let us know your thoughts.
It's also National Apprenticeship Week. We're going to be talking to one former apprentice who's now helping inspire those who live with a stammer.
And we're going to have a full showbiz roundup for you with the reporter and journalist Stephanie Tetchy.
Pressure seems to be growing on the Prime Minister from his own MPs to apologise for the Jimmy Savile smear he levelled at Sir Keir Starmer last week. This was because last night police had to intervene to escort the Labour leader away from protesters near Parliament yesterday. Let's now go to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, now to tell us more about all of this, the pictures that we saw there. I mean, it looked quite disturbing. It would have shocked and unsettled anyone. Really.
Oh, undoubtedly, this was a scary moment and it shouldn't have happened. It's really quite concerning when people, whether they be at the top of politics or really anywhere in Westminster, get hounded by a mob like this. If we take a step back or so, this mob amassed first outside Downing Street yesterday morning, in order to sort of start an anti-vaccine demonstration.
Yeah, Piers Corbyn was giving a speech there, wasn't he?
That's right. He was one of the leaders, one of the organisers of this protest, although it's important to say that Piers Corbyn wasn't part of the mob that was going after Keir Starmer a bit later on, we understand. This group then moved to Parliament Square, where they continued their protest and shouted at most people who walked by, at which time then they saw Sir Keir Starmer. and all hell broke loose, and they lurched on him, shouting things like "traitor," "Why aren't you opposing? You're not an opposition," shouting about Julian Assange, shouting about the New World Order, shouting about the Magna Carta, and also one person shouting about Jimmy Savile. But it's that Jimmy Savile comment that has really set Westminster alight this morning.
Yeah, well, look, that Jimmy Savile comment has upset a lot of people, not least one of Boris's staunchest allies, that is Munira Mirza, his policy advisor, had been by his side since his time as Mayor of London, and she came out in her resignation last week saying, "You're a better man than many of your detractors will ever understand, but this scurrilous accusation is desperately sad," and that's why she had to quit over the Jimmy Savile thing. We saw Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, also saying it. In all honesty, I wouldn't say it. So very prominent, very key people to the Prime Minister were offended by these words, and yet he doesn't look like he wants to apologise for it, does he?
It's interesting, when we look at the case of Munira Mirza specifically, it does look like there were some other factors in that decision. There were some reports on the Mail on Sunday over the weekend that actually there was a big clash between Munira Mirza and Henry Newman, the advisor who is moving from Downing Street back to work in DLUC, the Levelling Up Department. It looks like there were some personality clashes and policy clashes as well there. So potentially this was not as pivotal a moment as was suggested in the letter, albeit far be it from me to suggest that not everything is as it
she
seems on the
resigned
face
for
of
the
things.
reasons she quotes in her letter. We can't infer anything else, can we, if that's what she stated in the letter?
Well, we can read into more things. I think usually, I mean, everyone in politics has more than one motivation, but certainly this is something that detractors of the Prime Minister have leapt upon. It's interesting to note that the handful of Conservative MPs who are making the quotes that are informing the splashes across newspapers this morning were people who were already calling on the Prime Minister to go, although it must be said, I was sitting up in the press gallery when that comment was made last week, and it did not match the tone of the occasion. This was not the normal rambunctious back and forth that you'd see at the dispatch box. This was a time where people were fundamentally more solemn, and it didn't match the mood of the occasion.
To say this, he said it
Was
anyway.
it whispered to him by Jacob Rees-Mogg? Was that? I read some suggestion that it was...
So there are plenty of suggestions. One of the points that has appeared in the press is that his advisors in PMQ's prep had explicitly told him not to use this line. So it's clearly something that had been discussed before. And I think that ultimately it's defensible to say, if you're in a conversation about where does the buck stop, if you're in a conversation about should you take responsibility for what goes on in your organisation, should Boris Johnson have apologised for the fact his staff had a party the night before the funeral of Prince Philip, which he did, and Keir Starmer obviously apologised for what went on in the CPS, even though he wasn't personally involved in that particular prosecution. So there are many ways by which this is justifiable, but I think the moment that it came out, it just didn't match the tone, and that really upset and jolted quite a few people.
To what degree now, Tom, is the pressure where it would be the right thing to do, or the Prime Minister would feel it would be the right thing to do, to take those words back?
It would be a very hard thing for him to do, I think, because this would also fan the flames of the story again. And he wouldn't want to get into the situation where he was saying what he said was materially incorrect, because, of course, he had said last Wednesday in comments that were clarifying what went on, he explained that yes, Keir Starmer was not personally involved in this decision, but Keir Starmer accepted responsibility for all that went on in his department. And if you're someone who claims on your biography, on your lawyering biography online, that you were responsible for every prosecution in the country, that means that you're responsible for the successes as well as the failures. And I think that that is a fine point to make in the cut and thrust of political debate, although in this particular circumstance, perhaps it was ill-judged in the moment rather than in the content.
But no apology, you believe, not in his interests?
I think it's really hard to find the time and the moment to make an apology work, to make an apology look sincere, not forced into, and something that is politically advantageous, because the problem is if Boris Johnson were to say everything he said was wrong, that would give credence to the allegations that Boris Johnson was just reading far-right conspiracy websites, which I think is less than true.
More from Tom, 9:30 with his own show here on GB News. Have a good one. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
OK, the time is 9:08. Let's bring you up to date on the rest of the day's news. Boris Johnson has warned the Russian President Vladimir Putin that Britain will not flinch as tensions between Russia and Ukraine continue. Writing in the Times, the Prime Minister says he's considering dispatching RAF Typhoon fighters and Royal Navy warships to support the NATO Defence Alliance. The RSPCA is condemning a very upsetting video of the West Ham defender Kurt Zouma for kicking and slapping a cat. The footballer has apologised after footage of the alleged incident was posted online. Pornography sites will soon be legally required to verify the age of their users under new rules. The Online Safety Bill will require companies to put robust checks in place to stop children accessing harmful content. Shoppers spending more on furniture and household goods helped retail sales bounce back in January. The latest figures show they were up nearly 12% compared to the same time last year. New studies suggest energy drinks could be harmful to children, causing headaches, trouble sleeping and stomach problems. 1 in 3 youngsters are drinking them, and there are now calls to ban the sale to under 18s. Meanwhile, getting more sleep may be a handy way of shedding those extra pounds and getting in shape. New research suggests that getting an extra hour or more per night shaves around 270 calories off people's daily diets. That's the equivalent of around 3 chocolate biscuits.
The Duchess of Cambridge will become the new voice of CBeebies bedtime story to mark Children's Mental Health Week. She will read The Owl Who Was Afraid of the Dark by Jill Tomlinson, which will debut 10 to 7 Sunday evening. It's National Apprenticeship Week, a time dedicated to raising awareness of the benefits of specialised on-the-job learning.
Yes, according to government statistics, the period between August to October last year saw a 43% increase in people starting apprenticeships.
Which is good news.
Good news.
Joining us now, Anna Morrison, CBE from Amazing Apprenticeships, an organisation which promotes the benefit of apprenticeships, and William Levin, a former apprentice and someone who is now working hard to inspire and support others. Very good to see you both. Anna, first of all, apprenticeships. They're just the most obvious, common sense, fantastically constructive things that I can imagine. And yet I think the idea of an apprenticeship was decimated during the Tony Blair years of education, education, education. You were no one if you didn't go out and get some degree somewhere instead of knuckling down. I know you can do an apprenticeship after a degree, but by and large, did it do you harm in terms of apprenticeships?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me on this morning, and I'm glad you're such a supporter of apprenticeships. Yeah, I think we have been, over the past 5-10 years, having to really unpick that perception that full-time university is the only route to having a successful career, and really trying to reposition it so that everyone is understanding the way that apprenticeships can also lead to a degree, potentially, and is absolutely as credible as that full-time university option. And I think that's where we've seen a real shift. The creation of higher and degree apprenticeships and the broadening out of the levels of apprenticeships, as well as a broadening of the occupations alongside that, has been a really exciting time for apprenticeships. And I think that's definitely why we're seeing this upswing in interest.
Give us an insight into the broadening out of occupations. What are we talking about? I mean, you're not just talking about being an apprentice bricklayer or motor mechanic or whatever. What would an apprenticeship apply to?
Absolutely. So really important, we still have apprenticeships in some of those more traditional trade areas, so bricklaying, carpentry, motor mechanics. But we also now have nursing apprenticeships, solicitor apprenticeships, zookeeping, cybersecurity, digital marketing. You know, there are literally hundreds of different apprenticeship standards, they're called now. And through these different apprenticeship standards, they support thousands of different occupations. So I think it's really important for individuals, whether you're looking to leave school or college, or perhaps if you're an adult looking to retrain, if you think that there's not an apprenticeship that might support you, then do your research, because I think you'll be surprised at just how much they've changed.
I'm looking to retrain. I thought that zoo apprenticeship sounded quite appealing.
Oh, you like the idea of working with chimps?
Yeah, but I think I've never seen anyone who works with animals. I've been filming in South Africa, I've been filming all around the country, various zoos, whatever, and not once, Anna, have I seen someone who works with animals unhappy.
Completely true. Yes, yeah. And we've got some amazing kind of animal welfare organisations. The RSPCA, for example, they take on apprentices. But many of our kind of zoos across the country and different organisations that support animals, you know, equine, so working with horses. We've got so many opportunities out there. And I think sometimes you may just not realise what's right on your doorstep. You know, we've got many really high quality local job opportunities that we're keen to connect individuals in so that employers can really show off their organisations and nurture new people coming into their businesses.
Well, Anna Morrison, stay where you are. We want to come back to you in a moment, but I want to bring in William Lavin, a very interesting case study, because you've benefited through an apprenticeship and you've had a very interesting journey, haven't you? Starting from school or perhaps even preschool stages when you discovered you were suffering with a stammer. Has this apprenticeship helped you with that journey?
Oh yeah, it's changed me massively, like the confidence that I've had, but also because of school having like dyslexia, dyspraxia, like learning is much harder for me, and I knew that the university route wasn't really the best option because of the university lifestyle, but also the workload. So I thought, well, the apprenticeship is a great way for me to go into the media industry.
What is your apprenticeship? What are you doing?
So it was a business admin apprenticeship. So it is a very varied qualification, but it's a very qualification that I can use in lots of different roles. So it's a really helpful, but it's just taught me so much about the business world, but also how going to university doesn't really define your future and career.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, William. Honestly, I think so much about the time I spent at university, which was a brilliant 3 years of my life, but I definitely learned more on the job, as so many people do. And, you know, when you think about trying to pursue a vocation, for example, there's nothing more useful, surely, than learning on the job. And I do find it fascinating that, you know, for somebody who has, and you say you had problems with learning, but I would say you have learnt better than anybody else because you've had to overcome these challenges. I think of President Biden, also a fellow stammerer, achieving the highest office arguably in the world. It hasn't held you back, but this apprenticeship really helping you get where you want to go.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's just pushed me to do new things. And then I think, like job interviews, they are hard for young people because you're basically going into your next step from your life, but also having a stammer doesn't really help that situation. But I think from my roles, so I was a community ambassador for my apprenticeship provider Multiverse, where I helped go to different schools, events, and basically showed what the apprenticeship scheme were. But I did that as like a challenge for me as well.
Well, Anna, I mean, here we are, National Apprenticeship Week. Who are you appealing to? Where are you trying to get your message out to? Is it only important that employment bureaus know about this or the schools know about this? Or do you want to just reach young people in general? It was interesting you were saying there about older people retraining as well. So who are you appealing? What are you trying to do? How can we help you?
Absolutely, thank you. And it's fantastic to hear William's story as well. I think it's inspirational stories just like that we need to do more of and, you know, help William to share his message even wider. We are trying to reach everyone. So we're working with schools and colleges, we're working with teachers and careers advisors, young people, parents, employers, individuals, adults out there who might be considering apprenticeships. To really try and raise awareness and help people to do their research. And in terms of where to start with that research, our website, amazingapprenticeships.com, is a great place to start. Also, if you're interested in the vacancies that are available at the moment, I would recommend Find an Apprenticeship, which is the government website. Over 20,000 apprenticeship job vacancies on there today, which is incredible, you know, covering the entire country.
Lovely.
Lots
I
of
think we may
opportunities.
have a few vacancies here, wouldn't we?
It'd be great to have a little GB News apprentice scheme. Perhaps we'll set that up. Really good to talk to you, Dr. Anna Morrison and William Laban. Thank you for sharing your story. And we should say, thanks to your apprenticeship, you've now gone on to become a STAM-ambassador, so an ambassador for people with stammers. And your podcast is now broadcast in 17 countries.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's just been fascinating, really, like seeing how it's grown, but also just showing how, like, just utilising a different time, but also just talking to different people as well through the Ambassador programme, because lots of people who are going through that scheme are sort of afraid of going into the workplace and going to university.
Yeah.
So it's sort of just nice for them to have a sort of role model figure
Absolutely.
showing them that it is okay.
Yeah.
Well, a fine role model you are,
Absolutely.
William.
Well done.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Thank you
both.
very much indeed.
Lovely to talk to you.
With that, we're going to take a break. It is the Brits tonight. I'll be going along there, being there ringside tonight. Just waiting for Isabel's reaction to that. Really, you don't believe me.
Waiting for my
You do-
invite, but
well,
don't worry. You just...
Well, I was asked who I wanted to bring, and your name didn't spring to mind, but it was just...
Actually, I'm going.
You're not trendy enough. You're not, couldn't be.
Right, we've got to go to the break. We've been told.
Neither the two of us.
Neither of us are going. We'll be home washing our hair.
we are
We'll be
going to the
talking
break.
about them. See you in a mo.
Yeah. GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Showbiz reporter Stephanie Tacky now joins us to run through the latest stories. And of course, this is Brits Day, Brits Night.
It is. It is the biggest night on the music calendar for us Brits. So tonight, after all of the Adele kerfuffle, last week she confirmed, guys, I'm going to be there tonight. So it's going to be all eyes on Adele. The last time she came on stage at the Brits was 6 years ago. So tonight she'll be performing. She's up for 4 nominations. It's going to be, I think it's going to be either a big night for Adele or a big night for Ed. So they're in 4 categories together: Album of the Year, Song of the Year, Artist of the Year, and Best Pop/R&B Act.
And you, as you say, they're going to be in the same category because this is the first time they've done away with gender-specific Best Female, Best Male, and in a way, it's sort of
narrows the field.
Narrows the field.
Yeah, you know, Isabel, we've spoken about this before when it first broke, because we thought that women were going to get the short stick of this and they won't be nominated. But luckily, the Brits are so happy to say that women have had the most nominations that they've seen in a decade. So nominations, one thing, but we're actually going to see tonight who picks up those awards.
Yeah, but I just wish it wasn't based on gender. I wish it was just based on the quality.
Definitely, and I just feel like sometimes they push to go far too woke, and it's just like, let's just let the music do the talking.
But you not think sometimes, you know, a woman brings a different emotion to a song and a man brings a different emotion. So
Totally.
sometimes it takes it to be a man's song, or, you know, depending if it's a ballad or not. And
definitely,
yeah.
and they've got different fans and different appeals and stuff like that. So I feel like the lines are going to get all blurred. But you know what? Tonight we're all going to see whether it's been a good decision or not.
Yeah, well, they won't go back from it, will they? There's no way they can go back from that now. It's done.
Adele, I suspect there'll be a lot of love in the room for Adele.
I think there will be, because obviously she's had a hard time recently. Obviously pulling the plug on her Las Vegas residency, that didn't give her any good coverage at all. So the fact that she's actually coming back and performing, it's going to be amazing to see how she does on stage.
Sometimes at these award ceremonies, as you know, people don't turn up unless they're given the nod.
Yeah, definitely.
You'll be getting them. She's turned up. She's up for 4 categories.
It's all of music politics, but we have other performances as well. Liam Gallagher will be on stage.
Is he still relevant?
He's still rocking about.
Is he still up for awards?
Apparently, he says he's not much of a boozer as he was before, so I think this will be
half
a
the fun.
very clean-cut performance from Liam Gallagher. We've got Ed Sheeran who's going to be opening the show, and apparently it's going to be quite a fiery start, and he's going to get set fire to the stage.
Oh dear.
OK, if you had to choose Ed or Adele, go.
Oh, I'm going to go for Ed.
Eamonn, you hate Adele.
Oh!
No. I think there will be...
The type of music, you just find it a bit miserable.
Oh, it's a bit dreary.
Yeah, so you're Ed. OK, well, I'm going to go Adele then.
I'm going to go Adele.
Oh, you are?
Yes, yeah, I do think
I was just going for the opposite.
I do think... Look, she's not turning up to lose 4 times.
No.
I know, but Ed's turning up
too. 2-2 draw?
2-2 draw, I think. 2 for Ed, 2 for Adele.
And that seems about fair, because they're both awesome.
Yeah, come on.
Sit on the fence. OK. Speaking about nominations, Oscars are declaring
Oscar
today.
Nominations this afternoon. It's a long wait. Last week we had the BAFTAs. It's announced the Oscars time, and they're very specific. At 1:18 this afternoon on their YouTube channel.
Why 1:18?
I don't know. They're like, tune in 1:18. We're going to be streaming it this afternoon. So we're going to find out. So there's big talks of who's going to be up for Best Picture. So Kenneth Branagh's Belfast. Apparently that's going to do really well. It picked up 6 nominations last week in the BAFTAs. So I think today it'll do well.
Have you been to see it yet?
No.
That's a disgrace.
Oh,
What, that I haven't been?
Not even that you haven't been.
I know.
Not even out of tribute.
But can I? Well, I will. And I had my Belfast taxi drive this morning, and I thought the same. I must go and see it. But
Come and see it with me.
I will. I'd love to. In Belfast, even better.
I can translate for you.
Oh, yeah. But what this does for me is it makes me... That's my viewing for the year.
Yeah, it does. Because I think a lot of people haven't really heard of these films. So the Oscar nominations actually puts it out there, the best films that we should be watching.
No, they're all woke and dreary. I haven't had decent films.
Belfast is woke and dreary.
Well, no, I think generally the Oscar nominations are all a bit worthy. You know, you don't get anything exciting like The Magnificent Seven or Star Trek II Wrath of Khan or, you know, good watches.
We have to leave it there. Have fun at the BAFTAs tonight. Do us a favour. Sorry, the Brits even. That BAFTAs are next week.
Well, I'll get all the gossip for you.
I would have kept on talking to you. She's like a school teacher.
Yes, I'm afraid we've got to make way for Tom Harwood.
The bells ring. We'll be back in the morning to do it all again. Hope you'll be with us. See you then. Bye-bye.
Hello, a very good morning to you. A mild start for most of us, bright for many actually throughout much of today, but a lingering zone of cloud and rain will affect parts of northern England, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland. Here's the weather front responsible. It's dividing the country today between mild but cloudy southern parts, brighter but colder northern areas. So for central and northern Scotland, here it is a chilly start to the day with showers arriving, particularly for northern and western Scotland, along with a brisk breeze with gales to the far northwest. Snow falling above 300 or 400 metres. Northern Ireland, meanwhile, southern Scotland, northern England stays cloudy and in places fairly damp, particularly northwest England. But to the south again, across much of the rest of England, much of Wales, brighter skies, even some sunshine coming through. And where we get some sunshine, 14 Celsius is possible. And actually that weather front remains in place more or less throughout Tuesday evening, but eventually during Tuesday night it starts to push south, initially into North Wales.